2027.
The answer from European capitals has been as resounding as it is clear. We are in an era of rearmament to respond to the short-term urgency to act and to support Ukraine, but also to address the long-term need to take on more responsibility for our own European security.
On Saturday, we also agreed a new £2.2 billion loan for Ukraine, backed not by the British taxpayer, but by the profits from frozen Russian assets. It is my pleasure to bring from His Majesty the King a letter. He sends his best wishes and his regards, of course, but he also asked me to bear this letter and bring it to you. So can I present the letter from the King to you?
Thank you very much. Am I supposed to read it right now?
Yeah, please do.
I will do.
I've got to tell him what your reaction is, so I need to know. I need to know.
He is a great gentleman. A great, great gentleman. He said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time, and he better not be right. Well, I just think he should be more appreciative, because this country has stuck with them through thick and thin. We've given them much more than Europe, and Europe should have given more than us, because, as you know, that's right there, that's the border.
What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media.
You're gambling.
Very good morning to you. It's just after 6 o'clock on Saturday, May the 31st. I'm David Bull, and this is Weekend Breakfast live from London. A warm welcome along. Great news, as you would expect, because it is obviously Saturday. So it's World No Tobacco Day today, a day that encourages people to give up smoking. And as you would expect, as a medic, I approve of this message. Very good, very droll, very droll. Also today, it's World Parrot Day today, a day dedicated to recognising the beauty and intelligence of this type of bird. Now, there are nearly 400 types of parrots in the world. Amazing. And actually, they can live up to 30 years.
When Mr. Slater's parrot says that Geezer likes to get one on the go.
Wow, what can I say? Also, happy birthday to Clint Eastwood. Amazingly, the Hollywood actor and film director is a very youthful, wait for this, 95 today. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear.
Right turn, Clyde.
Happy birthday to you. Ping pong.
Right, let's move on to this hour's fascinating facts.
Today's fascinating facts.
So, this hour's fascinating facts. On this day in 1076, Waltheof, Earl of Northumbria, and the last of the Anglo-Saxon earls, was beheaded at St Giles's Hill near Winchester after rebelling against William the Conqueror. He was the only English aristocrat to be executed during the reign of William I, and of course that was William the Conqueror. On this day, this is really interesting actually, on this day in 1678, the Godiva procession, a commemoration of the legendary ride by Lady Godiva, born 990 AD, was instituted on this day as part of the Coventry Fair and was celebrated up to the 1960s. Now, according to the popular story, Lady Godiva took pity on the people of Coventry, who were suffering grievously under her husband's oppressive taxation. Her husband agreed to repeal the taxes if she stripped naked and rode through the streets of the town, clothed only in her long hair. She agreed conditionally that all persons should stay indoors and shut their windows. But one person, a tailor known ever afterwards as Peeping Tom, disobeyed the proclamation and was struck blind. And on this day in 1859, The clock in the clock tower of the Houses of Parliament was started with the bell, of course, Big Ben, sounding for the first time on the 11th of July, 1859. And those are this hour's fascinating facts.
Wake up, the weekend's calling, it's time to cheer. Coffee's brewing, got the radio near. David and Claire, they're the breakfast team, reviewing the news, making headlines lean.
Well, a very good morning to you. 5 minutes past 6 on Saturday, May the 31st. Of course, that jingle gave it away because everyone's favourite Scot is with me this morning. Of course, that is the only one. Claire Moulton, good morning. How are you?
I'm very, very well. How are you?
I'm all right, thanks.
Great.
You look very well.
Thank you.
You look really well.
I'll tell you something. I was quite surprised after that wonderful jingle for Happy Birthday, Clint.
Yes.
But how did you know it went ping-pong at the end?
Oh, because I've heard it before.
Oh, right.
Yeah, we always play it.
Oh, right. Always?
We play it for every birthday. 95.
95.
That's extraordinary.
Incredible.
Isn't it?
As are his films, though.
Yes. It is amazing, actually, because I sort of grew up with him, so I suppose, given my age, he would be 95.
Well, yeah, but he's still very much, you know, making movies. He's still directing them, producing them, and acting in them.
Yeah.
I think Gran Torino is one of my favourites.
Is it really?
It really is.
Can't comment, I have to say. Also, today is World Parrot Day. Okay.
Right.
I was just looking this up. So parrots, or psittaciformes, known as psittacines, are beaks, as we know, birds with curved beaks, upright stance, and clawed feet. Do you know there are 410 species and 101 genera found in tropical and subtropical regions? Really sadly, though, a third of parrot species are threatened by extinction. What do we do as humans? You know, the fact is that we destroy nature's wonders, and it's really sad.
There's actually an article in one of the papers today that talks of these green parakeets that are taking over London. I don't know if you've been exposed to them.
I can't say I have.
Well, I mean, in the Richmond, West London, Chiswick area, they are horrific.
So where have they come from?
Richmond Park, and they just fly all over, and they seem to be, there's no taming their breeding.
That's extraordinary. Also, I'll tell you something else extraordinary. 50 million parrots, that's half of all parrots, live in captivity.
Well, do you know anyone that's got a parrot?
I do actually. His name's Max.
What, the person who's got it?
No, the parrot is called Max. And Max, they're brilliant mimics. And so Max has this habit of picking up on naughty conversations and repeating them back and then giggling and cackling because he knows that what he's saying is actually incorrect. And the other thing, I don't know if I can...
They must have quite a lot of emotional intelligence
They
then,
are
to a certain extent.
They're extremely bright parrots. And so when you tell Max off for using that, he will then just repeat it back. And he gets so overexcited, he then started doing a number 2, and then the more we laughed at him doing that, the more he would mimic it and do it again. So
just put a cover over his cage.
Yes, and that's what you do.
Right,
so you cover the cage and then you say, "Go to sleep, Max," and he does. It's my very, very good friend, actually, owns Max. They also display true tripedalism. They use their necks and beaks as limbs, and they use propulsive forces equal or greater to the forces generated by the forelimbs of primates. So they're very, very clever parrots, and the way they actually move. I just thought I'd mention it.
OK, you mention it then.
So early in the morning. So let's move on. Let me just tell you what is going on in the news this morning. Let's start with the front page of the Daily Telegraph. Are you ready for this? Because it is truly shocking. Foreigners claim £1 billion a month in benefits from the UK public. So benefit claims by households with at least one foreign national have doubled to nearly £1 billion a month. This is in the past 3 years, according to official government figures. So households with at least one claimant who is a foreign national received £941 million in March alone. That has gone up from 461 million in March 2022. It is nearly a sixth of this month's universal credit payments. I mean, these are truly shocking figures. And if you remember, actually, to be fair to her, Angela Rayner was actually urging Rachel Reeves to consider cutting back on the benefits given to migrants. And of course, Rachel Reeves is facing a growing backbench rebellion over her plans to cut welfare spending. When you look at, I was just looking at these figures, this is absolutely off the scale. So this accounts for 15.5%. Wait for this. The universal credit bill a month, Claire, is £6 billion.
That is extraordinary because, as far as I understand it, universal credit is there which supersedes housing benefit, working tax credit, and
yeah, it was Ian Duncan-Smith, wasn't it?
It was. He completely reformed it for one payment, and from that one payment, people are supposed to pay their rent, pay their bills, and because mortgage holders have got, if you've got a mortgage, there's something different, mortgage relief there, and notwithstanding the sickness benefit as well. But the way these figures are calculated, I think headlines like this can be very irritating and can stoke a lot of anger in the country, because it's like, well, I'm struggling at the moment to to pay my bills.
I think everyone is.
Everyone is, struggling at some form or another. The winter fuel payments were removed for old age pensioners. And I think when headlines like this come out, it is very, very evocative to think that you've got people coming into this country that have not given anything to the country, and the bill is £1 billion a month in benefits.
And this is the bit that made my jaw drop open this morning when I started reading this. Funding of these just 2 months of the benefits for these households with foreign nationals, as you rightly say, who have not contributed to this country, cancels out the £1.4 billion the government saved by axing the winter fuel allowance. Now, there will be people around this country thinking this is not fair.
Well, that's the difficulty when it's such an emotive issue. Back in the 80s, 90s, it used to be benefit fraud, people in local authority council houses, and, how are they managing to get all of that when I can't get anything? How can they go on holiday? How can they have cars? Well, I'm sorry, people do deserve a life, and they do deserve to live, and they do deserve a lifestyle, but not at the expense of the taxpayer, OK? And now the paradigm has shifted from predominantly working class, lower working class people who are unemployed in this country. Now the optic has changed to the foreign national that is now into the country, but we're not alone.
No, we're not alone.
We're not. We need to remember that.
So I was looking at the eligibility criteria for foreign nationals. Now, they become eligible for universal credit and other benefits on the same terms as British citizens. And this is what I said to you just before we came on air, actually. Once they're granted either indefinite leave to remain or refugee status. Now, you're right. We're seeing mass migration of people across the globe. And, of course, they're coming to many countries, including the UK. But the criticism of the United Kingdom is we are far too soft. And so we are basically seen as a country that you want to come to because you get given benefits, David, that you have a nice time in this country.
It's actually being sold as that.
I know
from
it
the
is.
Spanish authorities and the French authorities.
Funny that, isn't it?
Too.
And why is that?
The economic migrants that are moving in.
Yes.
Because not a lot of them are actually, in my view, asylum seekers.
I would agree. And then we come back to the bigger conversation that we talk about literally every week, which is just the rise of people and immigration into this country. And that includes illegal migration, but also legal migration into this country.
And the other thing that astounds me about this figure and these figures is that I didn't actually think they were processing people as quickly as they appear to be.
It's a really good point.
There's so much going on here, I think. To try and untease it, it's going to be incredibly difficult to have a really good grown-up conversation about it without being labelled a lefty nut, or without being labelled, of course, right-wing.
A far right-winger, as some of the tabloid press like to say.
This just becomes such a criticism now.
Hasn't it, just?
Hasn't it? Your political view, I think we have been so conditioned now, to set poles apart from different views, We can't have tabletop discussions any longer. Or
in the pub.
Or in the pub.
Yeah.
You can't talk in the pub now because of banter police.
Yeah.
You can't even think about things now before you're arrested. It is like, honest to goodness me, it's like that Tom Cruise film. What was it, Minority Report?
Yes.
Got these precogs going on, so we actually are imprisoned and caught for things that we haven't even done yet.
So, but let's just look at this objectively. If we are paying out universal credit every single month of £6 billion, no wonder the country's bankrupt. I mean, it's a huge sum of money, isn't it? But also I was then reflecting on young people who are British nationals growing up here thinking, what is the point of me actually working? Because it seems so unfair in terms of getting on the housing ladder. It just seems that everything is stacked against you as a young person. I really wouldn't want to be a young person growing up in this country.
Well,
you've got
four
kids.
of them.
Yeah,
I've
I know
got
you
four
have.
of them.
Yeah.
And, you know, thankfully they're all, you know, they're all
Doing
okay.
well.
They're all
Yeah.
doing well. But that's because they've had really good parenting. They've been brought up to not expect anything, to get things for themselves, to have resilience, you know, and to know that the world does not owe them a living.
Well, that is very true, and it is a reflection of your parenting, and they have done well, but you've also made sure that they had a good work ethic.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, and they all work. They all work. Even Tom, who's a student, and Anna's now got her grad job. Caitlin's flying high in her company. Steph's came back from Australia, and even she is working 40 hours a week. You know?
Yeah, and this is quite interesting. Stephanie, good morning to you. Stephanie's just messaged in, migrants live in shanty towns in their own country. Why do they have to live like millionaires here? By the way, tell Claire she looks lovely this morning. You too, of course, David, that's very kind. It's a really good point, isn't it? And you can suddenly see the pull factor, as you rightly say. Of course, the French don't want to keep migrants in their own country, that they are actively encouraging people to come to the UK. But also, my understanding is the benefit system in France is nowhere near as generous as it is in the UK, so it's hardly surprising.
Nor is the healthcare.
Indeed.
Regime.
So it's hardly surprising that migrants want to come for a better life, and I don't blame them for that.
Look,
but then we have a duty of care to the citizens of this country.
I completely agree with you, and that's why I actually agreed with JD Vance as well when he said, look, we need to take care of our own backyard first before we start looking after anyone else. And that's true as well as a parent. As a parent, I made sure that my kids were sorted first. They were my priority. It's called the domestic home. The domestic church, and that was that. You know, it was my priority
the domestic
to sort.
Church, I like that.
My priority to get my home in order before I could even think about helping anyone else.
So there are some proposals. Keir Starmer announced a crackdown on net migration earlier this month that included proposals to extend eligibility for indefinite leave to remain from the current 5 years to 10 years. So that would effectively deny tens of thousands access to benefits for longer.
Yeah, but look, what's that then going to do to society? Look what's happened in San Francisco. It's a ghost town now.
I know it is.
Drugs, fentanyl, oxyfenton, oxycodone, everything, OK? It's going to worsen if people are living on the streets. We need to help, but we need to stop people coming. But equally, the ones that are here, we need to make sure they're processed and given the help and support they need.
So it's quite interesting, this one as well. Sean in Gloucester, good morning to you. I do look forward to your show. Good morning, David. Thank you. Yet again, Keir Starmer has proved his incompetence by trying to badmouth Nigel Farage and Reform's policy. The reason that I mentioned that is it's actually mentioned in the copy here. We've got an election coming up in Scotland. I'll be careful about what I say there. He says Nigel Farage has a massive advantage over all the other parties. He understands you have to control spending rather than endlessly taxing more to raise ever more money. It's the first rule of business. Keep your expenses as low as possible. None of the other career politicians understands this. I mean, Keir Starmer is facing a huge problem. I mean, they're clearly under the microscope. The speech the other day was an extraordinary... I mean, I watched that, and in fact it was...
Is Morgan McSweeney actually a person? Is he actually there?
But why
is he alive?
But why did he call the press conference when all you're going to do as the Prime Minister is give... was basically give...
a party political broadcast for the reform.
I mean, I found the whole thing absolutely gobsmacking.
I mean, his head of comms, Morgan McSweeney, come on. Morgan who?
Well...
It's not the first time I've asked that question.
No, quite. Let's talk about this one. This is the Daily Mail this morning. Here's the front page of the Daily Mail. The Prime Minister has been told to sack the legal chief over his Nazi slur. Again, this was absolutely unprecedented. Keir Starmer is under mounting pressure to sack his Attorney General for likening right-wing, and you mentioned this earlier, right-wing British politicians to Nazis. Cabinet Minister and Labour MPs have actually turned on Lord Hermer. This is when he invoked 1930s Germany. He criticised the Tories and Reform UK for saying Britain should quit institutions such as the ECHR, the European Convention on Human Rights. Now, we know that he gave this speech. It was really ill-advised. He has clearly got a government position, but he is speaking as a lawyer. And the Prime Minister's longtime friend was forced to apologise for his comments yesterday, saying he regretted using, in his words, clumsy language and rejected the charge.
No, he didn't.
What?
He didn't. I don't think I think
he was forced to issue the apology.
Yeah, he was forced to apologise. I think he would stand by what he actually said in private. And this goes back again to, are we not allowed to say anything now?
No.
Without it being recorded, without it being homogenised, sanitised and globalised. And if it doesn't fit to whatever narrative someone's trying to spin, out.
Left-wing, lefty Isling Tonys. Yeah. But the whole point of international law, and it was set up, the ECHR was set up in the wake of the Second World War, but the point about it is international treaties change, and you are quite within your rights to leave.
Society's changed.
Society has changed. Also, the threat has changed. The interpretation of the ECHR has changed. And whilst we can adopt those international laws, we can equally say as a country, we wish to leave.
Yes, absolutely.
But he seems unable to understand that.
Oh, he understands it.
So why is... But also, in terms of the political gift for more right-wing parties, this is a total gift. I'm going to show you the latest polling, actually, a little later on, and show you the map of the United Kingdom. But again, so you've got Starmer issuing a speech, which basically is a gift to Nigel Farage and Reform. You've got Herman now saying anyone who's affiliated with Reform, or indeed those Tories who want to leave the ECHR, are now Nazis. And that is going to drive up the polling for those parties.
I know.
So are they delusional? Why are they doing it?
I just think it's part of this, you know, the liberal elite. It comes back, for me, it comes back to Tony Blair and the rise of the champagne socialist and Peter Mandelson and...
they think they know better, don't they?
They do, and it's that, I'm talking down to you.
Yes. You're
so
too
you need
stupid.
to look up to me. You're too stupid.
Yes.
Don't you worry.
It's a bit like...
I'll look after you. That is why we've seen such a surge from the populist vote to Reform, because they've been unheard.
Yes, and Reform UK's Richard Tice said Lord Homer is trying to prevent debate and legitimate discussion about whether to leave the ECHR by smearing, labelling and linking its opponents with extreme references to the 1930s Germany. He should resign. Now, to be fair to Kemi Badenoch, she's also said that actually, if people want to have a conversation about leaving the ECHR, that is totally up to them and it's totally within their rights, and she's right. But she also criticised Homer over the surrender. I mean, he's responsible for giving up the Chagos Islands, which, by the way, he said China was ambivalent about, and now China says is a great idea because, of course, Mauritius is in bed with China. I mean, this... I mean,
and the
political elites...
it didn't even want to be handed to...
Well, and I saw that interview with that Portia Gossian man who was in floods of tears.
And the two women who took them to court, and it was that High Court judgment that sent Starmer to say, oh, no, we need to do it because if there was a possible litigation against what I've done, then they will win.
Kemi Badenoch says, yet again, Lord Homer has shown appalling judgment time and time again. He doesn't understand government. This is a really important point. He was put in the Lords by his mate Starmer. He then becomes Attorney General. He has no background in politics. He believes, as she says, in the rule of lawyers and not in the rule of law. And when you are an elected politician, or not elected politician, if you are a politician, I think you have to be very mindful of what you are saying. You cannot just have an academic discussion which has no consequences.
I also hope that the lawyers are not making the law. I hope that now the lawyers are actually still continuing, in the most part, to uphold the law.
Yeah.
And there's a very subtle difference.
Should he go?
No, I'm fed up with people being cancelled. Just let the man, you know, if you want...
But he's not fit for office.
But do you know what? No, look, David, the way that we can actually judge... the way we can judge this and the way that the public can decide what's best for the country and what's best for us is at the ballot box.
I agree.
OK?
But we still have another 4 years.
That's the way to vote.
But, I mean, he can have a reshuffle, obviously. Keir Starmer can have a reshuffle, so therefore would you not shuffle him out?
He's got so many to shuffle out, in my view.
He's going to have a very busy time.
I'm sorry, he needs at least 2 decks of cards.
Yeah.
To make that shuffle work, because they're going to be in and out, in and out, in and out.
How?
I thought it would be sooner, actually, than now.
So, but what does that show also about Keir Starmer's judgment? And actually, that's part of the question I want to ask. What does it also say that if he is keeping Hermer in place, what does that say about the governance of the Labour Party and also Starmer's own decision-making? And I guess I'm asking...
He's completely flawed. I mean, we've seen that through his appointments.
Well, I was
going to
say, has he got his finger on the pulse of the nation?
No.
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 So why not?
Because he's a robot. He can't even feel pulse. He's not human.
Right, OK, fine. But you think Hermer should stay until when?
Oh, I mean, who knows? It's how long is a piece of string? Come on, we've got things to be doing. They need to govern the country. They need to have direction. And without a general election or any more elections coming up, apart from the one in Lark Hall in Scotland on Thursday, it's the only one that, as a democratic country, we have to make a change.
Yeah, it's interesting. So just in terms of this, though, senior Labour MP Graham Stringer says it was a mistake to appoint someone with no obvious political experience to a senior position in Cabinet. Again, that shows a lack of judgment by the Prime Minister.
Lack of judgment.
If you join international treaties, he also reiterates my point, you can leave them. There are processes for this. And his comments were extreme and foolish. As I said, he has no background in politics. He's a friend of the Prime Minister. We're given a peerage because it's jobs for the boys.
Well, the Conservatives gave a lot of peerages as well. Michelle Mone.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
DPI.
But again,
Matt Hancock.
But it all seemed, it's just wrong, isn't it? That you're elevating people into an upper chamber, which is a great honour because you're a mate of the Prime Minister.
350 quid a day just for turning up.
Yeah, for lunch. For lunch. You sign in. Get lunch, 350 quid. I mean, I'm all in favour. I'm very happy to be Lord Bull of Brandeston. I think there's a ring to it, don't you? OK, very good.
It's all fur coat and knee knickers with you, though, isn't it?
I think we'll move on from that. Thank you, Claire. So I'm asking a question this morning. Thank you, Muldoon, for the moment. This front page of the Daily Telegraph. Foreigners claim £1 billion a month in benefits. What are your thoughts this morning about that? Is it a complete lack of fairness? How do you feel? Are actually Indigenous Brits basically being ignored by the current Prime Minister? What do you think about £1 billion in UK benefits going to foreigners? Let me know your thoughts, please. 0344 499 1000. Those calls charged at the national rate. You can text the word talk in your message to 87222. You can also message us on X at talkTV. After the break, I'm going to be talking about two other big stories in the papers this morning. A new era of threat amidst the changing face of war. This is the UK Defence Review, which is about to publish its findings on Monday. And also, NatWest Bank has returned to full private ownership 17 years after the UK bailed it out to the tune of £46 billion. We'll talk about that after the break. This is Weekend Breakfast. Good morning.
Don't you realise how you embarrassed us? Trump is evil.
They were saying that, yeah.
Yes, they were saying that. And Elon was saying that, and he's evil, and you know, you're also evil to
support him. How has it gone so much full circle? What's his journey
they
since then?
experienced the Biden presidency, and when they experienced the Biden presidency, they realised that this group of people were out to destroy everything of value in the United States, including their own businesses.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube.
Welcome back. 6:30 already on Saturday, May the 31st. Claire Muldoon joins me this morning. I'm David Bull. This is Weekend Breakfast. Let me just show you this front page if you are just waking up this morning. Yet more interesting news for the United Kingdom. Foreigners claim £1 billion a month in benefits. I'm asking this morning, how do you feel about that if you are just waking up? As Claire says, times are really tough. People are really struggling to put food on the table, pay the bills. All we see is bills going up, not down. Joining me on the line, Andrew from Hertfordshire. Good morning to you.
Good morning. You do a crackerjack of a job. Lovely to hear you both.
Oh, that's very kind. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrew.
And are you going somewhere nice? I can hear you're in the car.
Yeah, I'm going somewhere really good. I'm going up to North Norfolk, which is how the world used to be before we had Tony Blair and socialism.
Well, I know it very well because I am from the county below it, from Suffolk, so I hope you have a great time there.
Wouldn't you?
Thank you, Claire Muldoon. So what do you make of this then? Foreigners claiming £1 billion a month in benefits.
Well, if you just get it into perspective, I have a document at home when I couldn't, I didn't have work and I just left school and I applied for unemployment benefit. And I wasn't given it because I hadn't put anything into the system.
Wow.
And I have that document. It's from the last century. So if you think about the world that we're living in now, the pull factor is what you've got to get rid of.
Yeah.
So someone who's working as a family and they've got 2 children or more and they're working and they need support, then they should get support. Mm-hmm. If someone arrives in the country and they've contributed nothing, we should, and I appreciate that there's a process here that takes time, we should really give them the bare minimum. And it goes against the grain. You've got old people waiting for hips, cataracts, they've put in all the time. If you're in one of these migrant environments claiming benefits, you get a doctor within 15 minutes. The turnaround's unbelievable.
Mm.
I mean, and that's the thing is, once Clinton said, when the public think that they're paying taxes and they're getting no return, that's when it breaks down. And we're at that part and gone through it. And I think you talked earlier about, when did the arrogance come into government? It's like doctors talking to surgeons. Yeah, the operation was a complete success, but the patient died. Yeah. People are looking down at people, saying, "Look, you plebs, understand that I know best." Mm-hmm. And the other day with Starmer, he could have come out and driven a policy forward and said, "Right, I'm going to end these benefits for people that come here in the country and don't contribute. I'm going to make sure old people who've paid in get something." But he doesn't, because he just attacks Farage for no reason. He's just writing Farage's manifesto. So to your point, what you have to do, if you want to be a successful politician, you have to read the room. And people aren't nasty. We're not right-wing thugs. We're not Nazis. We just think that if I paid in, when I'm in a difficult place, after 20 years of paying in, I should get some support. Because I've got 2 children now, and it's a bit difficult for me. So can I have you know, something that enables me to pay for childcare, so on and so forth. You see what I mean?
I do, absolutely. I think your point is really, really valid, which is the Prime Minister isn't offering solutions. He is not on the front foot. He is not coming forward with policies that actually drive the country forward. All he's doing is attacking other parties, and particularly Nigel Farage, because he is worried. And all he is doing is playing into the playbook of Reform UK, and he's giving them airtime.
Yeah, but you should see Farage for what he is. He's a politician, a very slick operator. He's very good at what he does, up against someone who looks naive and stupid, but yet wants to tell everybody he's got a brain the size of a mini-planet.
Yeah. It's a really good point. I think at the end of the day, this comes down to fairness. Also, this line of funding 2 months of benefits for households with foreign nationals cancels out the winter fuel payment that they axed. I mean, that is going to play very badly, isn't it?
Well, to be honest with you, if you dig into those details, you know, all joking aside, you're very bright minds, that should be the leading headline. So what and that's what I think is interesting in relation to voting patterns. You've got a lot of young people who've got elderly grandparents, and they are never going to vote Labour again. They're going to turn straight right to Reform. And then before you even start, you've got the farmers, you've got the school fees. The problem is he doesn't have who are his voters? What group of people is he going to and saying, look, I am doing this, I'm stopping these payments for you? All he can do is attack Farage. It shows he actually doesn't have a core group of voters that he can go after. Because no one who voted Labour, like Boris brilliantly said, you lent us your votes, thank you. Those votes in the middle of the country, they got lucky. Who's his policies pointed at?
I would agree. Andrew, really good to talk to you. Enjoy North Norfolk. Thank you very much for your call. Loads of messages coming in. Dave in South Gloucestershire. Claire is right. We have to stop people coming here. Reduce or stop the pull factor. But as far as helping those already here, they do need to be processed thoroughly. And if they have the right to be here and no right to be here, then they need to be removed. Good morning, David. If the government doesn't get a grip on immigration, JD Vance will be right. The UK will become an Islamist country with a nuclear button. Yep. You're always a great start to my weekend. That's Steve in Cambridge. That's very sweet. Thank you very much, Steve. Good morning, Dr. David and Claire. This is Warwick in Devon. Dr. David, great start to your show as ever. If our brave soldiers who gave their lives in the 2 world wars could have seen how this lunacy of free benefits to foreign nationals has turned out, they would not have even got out of bed to fight for our freedom, and I wouldn't have blamed them.
Well, they probably would have actually, Warwick, because they had resilience, they had strength of character, they had desire and honesty and patriotism. That's why they would have continued, but I get your point.
Dr. D and the brilliant Claire Muldoon. Brilliant Claire Muldoon.
Of course.
It's all compliments this morning. Immigrants should not be eligible for the benefits until they've contributed through tax for at least 10 years. All the rest should be given a set lower level than the French payout.
That's why I think the point that Andrew made when he was left school and tried to claim unemployment benefit, and because he hadn't paid into the system, he couldn't therefore claim. That was back in the day as well. Don't forget that we all thought that our national insurance contributions actually paid for the NHS.
We really did. We thought it was ring-fenced, didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
I think many people still think that.
But it's not.
No, it's not. And, of course, it's stolen by all sorts of other departments as well. So, just to be fair to Keir Starmer, he is announcing a crackdown on net migration. He announced it earlier this month. Proposals only to extend eligibility for indefinite leave to remain from the current 5 to 10 years. But what we want is action. I'm sick of words.
He's a linguist. He's a lawyer. Of course he's going to speak words. Wordy words.
Wordy words. Keep all those messages coming in. We're just talking also, we always get back to stopping the boats. Dan from Kent, good morning, one of our regulars. Good morning, David and Claire. It is quite simple to stop these boats. Take away the carrot of benefits. There is no political will in the 2 main parties because they bow down to the woke. Roll on 2029. I do feel 2029 is a long way away.
Oh, my goodness me. It's like the winter of discontent. It's the longest summer. It's the,
Do you know we've only had a year?
Not even.
Almost
not
a year,
even.
isn't it? Yeah.
It's incredible.
I know, it seems to have dragged,
Awful.
doesn't it? Keep those messages coming in, please. What do you think about the £1 billion in UK benefits being paid to foreign, or at least a family with at least one foreigner in it? Let me know your thoughts, please. 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222 and message us on X. After the break, I'm going to be talking about the new defence review and the threats that the United Kingdom faces, and also we'll talk about the fact that government has now finally offloaded NatWest. That's all still to come. This is Weekend Breakfast. Good morning.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube.
Already on Saturday, May the 31st, Claire Muldoon joins me this morning. Let's talk about the new Strategic Defence Review, which is expected to conclude on Monday. The headline this morning in The Guardian, new era of threat amidst the changing face of war. This is Britain facing a new era of threat with drones, artificial intelligence and other technologies changing the nature of warfare more fundamentally than at any other point in history, according to the Strategic Defence Review. That is expected to report on Monday. It's a 130-page document. It's been written by 3 advisors to the Prime Minister. It is going to warn of the immediate and pressing danger posed by Russia and is expected to try to draw heavily on lessons learned from the war in Ukraine. It's also, however, going to focus on China. They're not describing China as an enemy. They're describing it as a sophisticated and persistent challenge, which at times has been willing to cooperate with Moscow, 2 smaller regional disruptors with Iran and North Korea. This is the most chilling bit for me, Claire.
What?
It is painting a picture of the most heightened military and security threat since the end of the Cold War.
Yeah. And remember all that money that was spent on the Prevent report a few years ago?
Yes. But
And
I mean, we're talking about hostile states here, and also we know that Russia is emboldened. We've seen this with Putin, we've seen Iran, we've seen the proxies being activated by Iran.
And we've also seen what's happening in Taiwan.
Yes. And this has been written by the former NATO Secretary-General George Robertson. In terms of defence spending, we've spoken a lot on this programme about the level of defence spending. It looks like the government is now about to commit to 3% of GDP to be spent on defence.
It's only 2.8 currently.
Yeah, my feeling is it needs to be 5. Really,
it really does. It really has to be. And also, these very hostile states are teetering on the precipice of either pushing buttons or pushing each other in a game of chess too far, too soon, that pieces topple over, and who's going to be caught up in the middle of it? Again, innocence all the time.
But also you see the...
And do we think NATO's actually worth its stake anymore?
Well, I do actually.
Do
but
you?
Well, so I do, but I think you need to have a re-energised NATO, and you need to have all the countries to actually contribute. Now, I can give you all the figures. Some of those countries are not paying their due. They need to do that.
I thought they were. Do you know who highlighted the fact that they didn't? Donald Trump.
Yeah. But just in terms of it, and I'll dig those figures out, but I can actually give you country-by-country breakdown of how much of their GDP they spent into NATO, because it seems very, very unfair that certain countries are paying far more than others, and you're right that it was actually Trump that said that many of these countries aren't. I can tell you the countries that are meeting the 2% target: the UK, US, Denmark, Slovakia, Hungary, Latvia, Finland, Lithuania, Estonia, Greece and Poland.
Yeah.
But there are lots of countries that aren't.
Well, clearly. There's about, what, 33 countries in NATO or something?
I think it's 35, yes.
30, yeah, round about that. So they're not emboldening NATO as an institution. Therefore, my question would be, is there any worth of having something, a different NATO? I think that's what we have to look to.
I think with the changing nature of the threat, you're seeing those Nordic countries that bordering Russia saying, right, we need to be part of NATO for a start.
Greenland.
Because they're very concerned about what is happening, obviously. If you can get some cooperation, and the Western Alliance are looking at a proposal to increase the defence spending from 3.5% of GDP by 2032, but in addition to that, another 1.5% for cyber and infrastructure initiatives as well. Also, I think one of the other things that we need to look at is the size of the British Army.
Yeah.
I mean, it's tiny.
It's tiny. Absolutely
73,000.
tiny. Yeah. And the Navy.
Yeah.
And the RAF. There's no motivation. I've got one boy and 3 girls. Right? I would hate my son to join the Marines or join the army, but that's just me, you know, because I can see the threat of hostility within these countries now that are, as I said, bordering on the precipice now. And is it a recruitment drive? Is there an issue? Yes, there is. And no matter how many adverts we see, born in Carlisle, made in the army, you know, it doesn't hold anything unless, like it was at Warwick from Cornwall that said, you know, the poor soldiers that lay down their lives in the world wars, they wouldn't do it now again today. And I said, well, I think they would, because they would have, you know, resilience, character and patriotism. I have to actually then ask myself the same question. Would young people now have those same virtues in order to fight for their country?
No, I've asked many young people and they said they wouldn't.
Do we then think that national service has to be brought back?
It's a tricky one, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm not sure I would have wanted to do national service, but there again, if the country needs it and if the threat is high enough.
Which it is now.
Well, one of the other things that I just think the way we treat our service personnel is appalling. The accommodation is dreadful in many cases, and actually the MOD is going to spend another 1.5 billion for military accommodation, including urgent upgrades for the 1,000 worst homes. 1,000 homes, which we know are appalling, and I've heard from many of my friends in the forces that actually the state of accommodation has been neglected, they're not looked after, and they need to be. Don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. And on leaving the army or the navy as well.
I would agree. And there's a very big problem, and I've seen this myself.
Mental health issues.
Well, I was about to say, and of course, you go from a very structured service with enormous discipline, and friends of mine who have come out of the armed forces then feel completely rudderless. They have no sort of sense of direction. They turn to alcohol, they turn to drugs, they become homeless, and there is no one to pick them up.
Exactly. And we see it on our streets day in, day out. And this is going back to my initial point. We need to help the people already in this country without helping extra. We are a small island.
I know.
We really are.
I was also reading from the other members of the review panel. So there's Sir Richard Barron's Fiona Hill. Now, she was the former Russia advisor to Trump. She said something really chilling, actually. Structurally, World War III has already begun because the international norms of behaviour have been eroded by Russia in Ukraine and fighting in the Middle East. Lord Robertson, chair of the panel, previously described Russia, China, North Korea and Iran as a deadly quartet.
Of course they... Have we been walking into this blind?
Yeah, I know.
Everyone can see it happening.
And you can see, I mean, we've reported on it multiple times about Russia sailing much closer to UK territorial waters or coming into territorial waters, submarines tracking the undersea cables. Because actually, when it comes to sort of conflict, of course, it's going to be far more sophisticated, including using drones, which we've seen in Ukraine, cutting undersea cables, actually wiping us out in terms of energy. And power cuts. And
it's the power cuts. And remember the minions, the Bulgarian minions that were employed by Russian, they became bots and they infiltrated tech systems here.
And I think we need to be very aware of what is going on, and also, as we say, just make sure that NATO has a purpose and that each country does actually contribute what it needs to.
Well, you know my view on the Ukraine, it's a Biden proxy war. It should never have started. It should never have started.
Or we should have done something about it when Russia first annexed some of that territory.
Crimea?
Yeah.
After Crimea, before Ukraine. Well, you know, I did think it would have stopped by now when Trump got elected. I'm surprised it hasn't.
I think Trump is surprised as well.
Yeah, I really think so.
Claire, thanks very much for the moment. I'm asking this morning, what do you think about the £1 billion that we are spending on foreigners in terms of UK benefits? That benefit bill is absolutely eye-watering. 0344 499 1000. After the break, I'm going to be talking about Axel Rudiker-Barner. You won't believe this. He's allowed to buy treats in prison, such as Maltesers and crisps, despite throwing scorching water over a prison guard in a horror attack. This is Weekend Breakfast. A very good morning to you.
Dogs are racist, according to the Welsh Labour Party. Deary me. Sorry. I can't help it. Apparently, breaking news. The economy has grown by 0.1%. I'm sorry, between July and September, according to the Office for National Statistics.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. 6:51, Claire. Already 51 minutes into this show already. Good morning, Dr. Bull. I woke up late this morning, missed some of your show. Good to see you and Claire this morning. That's Sharon in Staffordshire. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Sharon.
Sharon. Good morning, Dr. Bull and Claire. Good show as always. Never mind all this national security nonsense. What I need to know is, where do you get those amazing shirts from? Thank you very much. So jealous you could wear anything and it suits you. I can't. But anyway, thank you. Keep up the good fight.
You can't wear red.
We discussed that in makeup this morning.
I brought it up.
I can't wear red. I have to be very careful with red. It's dirty blondes. You always brighten up our Saturday and Sunday mornings,
Lovely.
isn't that lovely? Sharon Miller, one of our regulars, good morning to you. I love to see Claire on. She's always a voice of reason.
Thank you, Sharon.
Hi, David and Claire. This is Steph. Good morning to you. Service accommodation is so bad because it's looked after by private companies who are only interested in making a profit and not invested in keeping a decent standard. It's the least we can do.
Absolutely.
If you are serving this country, you need a comfy bed, nice accommodation, don't you?
Yeah.
And to be looked after.
It's the same with children in a home. That's all they need. That's all they want.
I agree totally. Let's talk about this, though. This is in the Daily Mail. Southport killer Axel Hotel Rudy Cabana is allegedly allowed to buy treats in prison, such as Maltesers and Chris, despite throwing scorching water over a prison guard 3 weeks ago. As we know, the 18-year-old triple murderer who was sentenced to 52 years for the murders of Bebe King, 6, Elsie Dot Stankham, 7, and Alice Da Silva Agua, 9, reportedly had the treats delivered to his cell. It's also claimed he is allowed to call his family. He can also have religious visits and receive money from relatives.
What on earth does he need money for?
To buy Maltesers in prison.
This is just horrific.
I agree.
Something seriously has to happen at Belmarsh Prison, because the facts that are coming out of here, the reported facts, are absolutely awful.
I think people will be absolutely shocked by this.
Incandescent with rage.
Yeah.
I am.
He is spending £5.50 a week since the attack the guards on his Maltesers. He's allowed to buy anything he likes as long as it's not dangerous. He has been on a basic level of treatment behind bars, meaning he no longer has access to TV. I'd stick him in a cell with absolutely nothing and no Maltesers.
Solitary confinement.
Well, I agree. Wait for this. He's no longer permitted to buy butter or baby oil. Why would you need butter and baby oil?
Why would you need baby oil in a prison?
I'll move on. He is allowed to call his family, have religious visits and receive money from relatives. Money. I mean, it
beggars belief, David.
It really does beg belief.
It really does.
Keep your messages coming in, please. Also, I want to talk about this. The UK government has sold the last of its stake in NatWest, returning the bank fully to private hands. It's amazing to think it was 17 years ago. I remember it like it was yesterday, when it was bailed out £46 billion to keep that bank afloat at the height of the financial crisis. The government took an 84%. This is, by the way, in the FT, which is not a paper I would normally read, and actually it's on the front page of the FT this morning. It took an 84% stake in what was then the Royal Bank of Scotland through 2 rescue finances in 2008 2009. NatWest shares this month returned above the bailout price for the first time since 2011. The government share fell below 1% earlier this month. But it seems that the Treasury received $35 billion through share sales, dividends and fees. It means the government managed to lose £10.5 billion.
Right, OK. Remember when you were talking about Harmer and should he go, right, and whatever, for saying the comments that he made. And I was like, look, just focus on what's going on. 17 years ago when this was done, the Northern Rock was involved. Fred the Shred was head of RBS, right? And it was a complete mismanagement because they had the wrong people in the jobs. And we are paying the price for people being the wrong people in the jobs. And I'm sick of it. I really, really am. I don't bank with any of these big banks. I'm still with the Nationwide because I quite like the fraternal aspect of the Nationwide. And I got an email to say, as a Nationwide member, you're getting £100. And they do that quite often. It's profit share. And they will not take themselves away from the high road. They will always have the presence. And it's great. It's all about where you put your money. It's about good fiscal awareness. And I'm sorry, but these bankers, they've got no responsibility.
Well, they play fast and loose with our money.
They really, really do. And JP Morgan, the head of JP Morgan, came out overnight, and obviously at American time, and was saying, America is, it's going to crack. They're going to have a huge, big financial crash. It's going to happen. The yields and the bonds, and it all goes back to pensions. And people are investing in stocks and shares, and they're wanting people to manage these accounts. I mean, what?
But it seems extraordinary to me, the government...
There's nothing tangible, David.
But also we lost £10.5 billion
pounds, because the wrong people are in the jobs.
But it seems extraordinary that you wouldn't wait for a return on your money, or at least, I think the taxpayer would be okay if you broke even. Fine, we underwrite it because actually it would have been disastrous had that bank been allowed to go under. But surely the government needs to get its money back.
Well, it's not going to, is it?
No, it isn't. Well, they're out. Anyway, I thought you'd be quite interested in that. 17 years ago, that was. Lots of messages coming in, as you can imagine. Good morning, guys. Just a thought. We've had 4 years of Labour still to go. How many more immigrants will be here by the end of the term?
Don't ask us, because we won't be here.
Well, that's a good point. Tony says, if I moved abroad to start a new life, would I be entitled to get benefits? If not, the migrants coming here shouldn't get any either. I mean, it's a really fair point, isn't it? Keep all those messages coming in, please. Good morning, David. Absolute piffle. Putin is not interested in Starmer's Labour wasteland. The greatest threat to Britain is Starmer. I'm going to tell you the latest polls, actually, later on. But Labour has, well, it's now on 22%. There's a big question in my mind. Who's voting for Labour still, the 22% voting for Labour?
Who voted for them for the general election?
Well, I think, well, the brilliant, and I've said this many times before, was actually they offered nothing.
Yeah,
there were no policies. It was just, it was a vote against everyone else, wasn't it? A vote against the Tories.
Yeah. But they were in opposition for 14 years.
Yeah, you'd think they'd come up with a policy.
Sorry, hello. What's going on? What would you do? What actually is in your manifesto?
Yeah. Good morning, David. This is Alan Connon. The threat to the UK does not come from hostile states. It comes from within. Keep all those messages coming in, please. Steve in Germany, good morning to you. Great show, Dr. Bull. Thank you very much for that. I watch it every weekend. You two guys this morning are speaking so much sense. Benefits for foreigners? No, unless they've paid into the system. I am an RAF veteran, this is Steve, and for my years in the military, I receive no pension. Fair? Question mark. Keep those messages coming in, please. After the break, we're going to be talking about more of the big stories hitting the headlines. This is Weekend Breakfast. A very good morning to you. Claire Muldoon and I will be back in just a few short minutes.
I can announce this government will begin the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the end of the Cold War. We will deliver our commitment to spend 2.5% of GDP on defence, but we will bring it forward so we reach that level in 2027.
The answer from European capitals has been as resounding as it is clear. We are in an era of rearmament to respond to the short-term urgency to act and to support Ukraine, but also to address the long-term need to take on more responsibility for our own European security.
On Saturday, we also agreed a new £2.2 billion loan for Ukraine, backed not by the British taxpayer, but by the profits from frozen Russian assets. It is my pleasure to bring from His Majesty the King a letter. He sends his best wishes and his regards, of course, but he also asked me to bear this letter and bring it to you. So can I present the letter from the King to you?
Thank you very much. Am I supposed to read it right now?
Yeah, please do.
I will do.
I've got to tell him what your reaction is, so I need to know. I need to know.
He is a great gentleman. A great gentleman. He said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time, and he better not be right. Well, I just think he should be more appreciative, because this country has stuck with them through thick and thin. We've given them much more than Europe, and Europe should have given more than us, because, as you know, that's right there, that's the border.
What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning morning to you just after 7 o'clock on Saturday, May the 31st. 1 hour down, 3 to go. I'm David Bill. This is Weekend Breakfast. Thank you very much for your company this morning. Now, great news if you are just waking up. It is World No Tobacco Day, a day that encourages people to give up smoking. And as a medic, of course, I approve of this message.
And we don't go tobacco around here no more. We don't go.
Wow, you've got an amazing record collection. Also, today it's World Parrot Day, actually, a day dedicated to recognising the beauty and intelligence of this type of bird. I particularly like parrots, actually. There are nearly 400 types of parrots in the world. They can live up to 30 years.
I'm a parrot, I'm your closest friend. I say the same things all day long, drive you round the bend.
And happy birthday to Clint Eastwood, the Hollywood actor and film director. Amazing, actually. He's a very youthful 95 today. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday to you.
Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, Bunk?
Right, let's move on to this hour's fascinating facts.
Today's fascinating facts.
Now, on this day in 1889, a painting of a small dog listening to a phonograph was shown to the general manager of the gramophone company in London by the painter Francis Barraud. It was of his dog Nipper. The phonograph was painted out, a gramophone was substituted. It soon became the famous trademark for the company, his master's voice. On this day in 1910, Lord Baden-Powell's sister Agnes formed the Girl Guides. And on this day in 1911, the White Star liner Titanic was launched at Belfast. At the ceremony, a White Star Line employee claimed not even God himself could sink this ship. And those are this hour's fascinating facts.
Oh, we're tuning in for the weekend show with David and Claire. The weekend has begun, mate.
Wow, that's a rude awakening for 7 o'clock. Yes, I'm joined by the lovely Claire Muldoon this morning, who looks particularly well and very sun-drenched.
Thank you.
You do. You look like you've been on holiday.
Yeah, I haven't.
I haven't. Well, I haven't either. I'm desperate to go on holiday, I have to say.
Me too.
But it does
Let's
look
go
nice.
to Spain.
Let's go. When now?
Let's you and Steve Denyer go to Spain.
That's a recipe for complete disaster. I have to say, though, this morning when I arrived here, it was light. That is great. It makes a big difference.
When my car came as well, it was great. It was just beautiful. And I took a lovely picture. We're so lucky to work here. And the picture from Talk Towers here on the 17th floor, it's beautiful. It really is. And London was just stunning.
It is.
Driving through it this morning.
I mean, and the beautiful thing about coming to work so early in the morning, of course, the streets are pretty empty, and you can see the beauty and the magnificence of the capital as the sun rises over Tower Bridge.
And there was a beautiful heart. It was just really lovely.
Yeah, and I think the weather's actually all right.
It's going to be lovely to die.
Well, I don't want to say that.
Here it is, but other geographical...
Your country.
My neck of the woods.
Your neck of the woods. Your country, not so good. Right, well, a very good morning to you. Let's just take you through this morning's papers if you are just waking up. Foreigners, this is front page of the Daily Telegraph. Foreigners are claiming £1 billion a month in benefits. That's right, benefit claims by households with at least one foreign national have doubled to nearly £1 billion a month. That has happened in the past 3 years. These are official government figures. Households with at least one claimant who's a foreign national received £941 million in March this year. This is up from 2022 in just 3 years. It went up from 461 million to 941 million. That's nearly a sixth of the month's universal credit payments. Now, this is the bit, and I mentioned this earlier, that made my jaw drop open. Funding 2 months of benefits for households with foreign nationals, just 2 months, cancels out the 1.4 billion the government saved by axing the winter fuel payments. So there will be many of you around the country just thinking, where are the government's priorities lying? Experts have suggested the increase reflects a surge in the number of asylum seekers being granted refugee status and, of course, the increase in net migration. So lots of people, lots of you are asking this morning, well, when do you become entitled to these benefits? Well, foreign nationals become eligible for universal credit and other benefits on the same terms as British citizens once you are either granted indefinite leave to remain or you get refugee status.
No, that's not a Labour policy.
No.
Just, I mean, that's just been the way that it is. But the problem is the number now that are coming through. But the difficulty I've got in getting my head around all of this is I didn't think there was enough processing going on in order to facilitate this. But also on the front page of the Telegraph. Well, it's like it's like grief.
Well, it is a bit.
Rachel Reeves is set for a 24 billion tax rate. Where's she going to get that money from? I'll tell you, savings.
Well, yes, of course. And she said, do you remember in the last budget fiscal event, she said, well, all the hard lifting has been done pretty much, quote unquote, vaguely.
Unquote, yeah.
And of course that is not true.
No.
But then we'll talk about this later because of course they've given massive pay rises to the public sector.
Yes.
And now the doctors are going to ballot on industrial action again.
Give us more.
Give us more. A huge amount more, actually. We'll talk about it in just a minute because I think it's a massive story. I actually commented on social media and tried to explain what we got when we were junior doctors. Now, I mean, we were paid appallingly.
You got a rite of passage. That's what you did.
Right. And we also did 1 in 2.5 on call.
Yes.
I think I got about 18,000 a year.
Yeah.
But the big difference was, of course, we didn't pay tuition fees.
Yeah.
And I think that has to be factored into this, and that's why under my policies I would then underwrite those tuition fees for people.
You wrote the reform.
Yeah, I did. I wrote the reform health policy, and under my policy I would underwrite the fees for those kids going into medical school if you then stay within the NHS for 10 years.
Well, I think that, well, OK, that's good if it's 10 years, but I think actually it should be now, even if you're paying for your tuition or not, you should at least stay at least 5 years in the NHS post qualification.
Very difficult to do when you've paid for your own education, isn't it?
And also very difficult to do when places like Australia and indeed most of the UEA are, you know, it's a cash cow.
Well, also come to our country, it's lovely and sunny and we pay you more. Why wouldn't you?
Lifestyle.
I mean, I don't blame them, but we'll talk about that in a moment. Just in terms of these universal credit payments, it is extraordinary. This number that has come up represents 15.5% of the total £6 billion. Not a year, this is a month. 6 billion quid.
Staggering, but what's the answer though? People do need help, right?
I think the answer is to crack down heavily on immigration and to tighten the criteria.
Thank you. That's the point I was trying to make.
Isn't it? And that's the front page of the Telegraph this morning. Let's move on now to Herma, because this is a big story. The Prime Minister has been told to sack his legal chief over the Nazi slur. Keir Starmer under mounting pressure to sack his Attorney General. I still can't believe he did this, actually, for likening the right-wing British politicians to Nazis. The idea that people are discussing, well, is the European Court of Human Rights actually fit for purpose? You know, should we leave it? Should we actually have the say?
Why can't they just discuss that? Why do they have to go down to such a base level of calling people names? That's the bit that I don't get. It's the discourse now. We cannot have a grown-up conversation, more or less, about anything, because people are, you're branded left, you're branded right. There is nothing, absolutely nothing that anyone actually agrees on, or you can have a grown-up conversation about.
Well, Cabinet Ministers and Labour MPs have turned on Lord Herma. We'll talk about this more in a minute. After he invoked 1930s Germany, he criticised the Tories and Reform UK for saying Britain should quit institutions such as the European Convention on Human Rights, because they have talked about that. The Prime Minister's long-term friend was forced to apologise for his comments yesterday, saying he regretted using clumsy language but rejected the charge. I don't think he understands what he's done. And there is a big difference between being a lawyer and then having a prominent position in government. As Attorney General.
And Lord.
Well, and also, you know, he hasn't exactly got a great track record, has he? Like, let's look at the Chagos Islands, for example. So, but Starmer lacks the backbone to do anything.
Does he? But he might just be absolutely obstinate and will not budge, which isn't a good. I mean, he might think that's a desirable virtue to have in a leader, as a leader of the country, but I can't see it. I see a man, a robot with no pulse, and who is completely robotic and has got no sense of judgment, and he definitely does not have his finger on the pulse of the court of public opinion.
Not at all. I mean, it's almost a great lesson in how not to govern.
It's Shakespearean almost. It totally is.
It's going to be interesting to see what's happening, because I think many of the Labour MPs, and particularly the new intake, are starting to find their feet and their voice in Parliament, and it can't be easy to go in as a new MP. But they're starting to think, hang on a minute, I'm not going to keep my seat at the next election. I'm deeply worried. Even the members of the Cabinet are thinking, hang on a minute, this is a bit rudderless.
Well, they should be. That whole Cabinet needs to be. IKEA would have built a better Cabinet than what Starmer's got.
Good line.
Yeah, I know. Honestly, they've got no Labour values either. They've got no values. Well, name me one policy. Can you?
Oh, don't challenge me on that. No, I can't. So that's Daily Mail. The Guardian, we talked about this story just a minute ago. Britain is facing a new era of security threat with drones, artificial intelligence, other technologies, changing the nature of warfare more fundamentally than at any other point in history. This is
scary biscuits.
Yeah, it is, from the Strategic Defence Review. It's a 130-page document written by 3 advisors to the Prime Minister. It's going to warn of the immediate and pressing danger posed by Russia, and is expected to try to draw heavily on lessons learned from the war in Ukraine. It's focusing also on China. It's not calling China an enemy, and of course we are so reliant on Chinese goods, aren't we, in the way that we buy everything, but as a sophisticated and persistent challenge, which at times has been willing to cooperate with Moscow. It will paint a picture of the most heightened military and security threat since the end of the Cold War, but it will fall short of saying that the intensity of Moscow's cyber and sabotage activities mean that Britain has already drifted into a war with Russia. That's the front page of The Guardian this morning.
Yeah, and I'm just looking up George Robertson. I thought it was him. He used to be a Labour politician.
He did. He did.
He was
NATO Secretary General as well.
Yeah, he is now.
Yeah, he is now. Sorry, he was a former Labour MP. Yeah.
Yeah, and he served under Tony Blair.
He did. And this has been written. So.
And he's Scottish.
He is Scottish. Is that relevant?
Always relevant.
Always relevant, OK. But they're talking now about increasing GDP to up to 5%, 3.5% of core GDP by 2032, another 1.5% for cyber and infrastructure initiatives. So that's The Guardian, Britain facing a new era of security threat. Now, the iWeekend takes a different line, same review. Cyber hackers will be deployed to fight drones on battlefield in a new era for warfare.
Do you know companies actually involved with this, because they have to get the big companies involved? You remember those lads, I can't even remember what they were called now, who infiltrated and had a cyber attack on M&S?
Yes.
That's the kind of lads that should be employed by big companies and government.
Totally right.
To actually, you know, watch out for cyber hackers and try and infiltrate the Bulgarian minions.
Yes, and I think that's where they are looking. The security services are trying to recruit young people who are very tech-savvy.
They must.
So, cyber experts to be sent to the front line alongside regular armed forces in a major modernisation of the British military. A digital war-fighting group will work with the infantry to scramble enemy signals and take down drone swarms. And the plans have come in response to the Ukraine war, where Russian drones have killed more soldiers than traditional weapons. That's a pretty chilling stat.
It is chilling, but if you actually look inside the Independent, our favourite Japanese ambassador is no, page 3, just the first page. Right, there you go.
I saw this yesterday.
Hiroshi Suzuki, Japanese ambassador, is a man of good taste. Paddington Bear, Tunnock's tea cakes, Iron Brew.
Iron Brew?
Iron Brew made from girders.
Yes.
Oh, it's just wonderful. He's so happy and so lovely.
Well, he's doing a tour of Scotland at the moment, isn't he?
He is, yeah.
Yes. I like the fact that he was eating Tunnock tea cakes for breakfast.
Oh, what a good man.
Yeah.
What he really needed, though, was a square sliced sausage and a well-burnt Morton's roll with a potato scone inside it.
Oh, I'm really hungry, actually. Let's move on to the Times just before the break. Defence pledged by Labour again. Britain will definitely, this is according to John Healey, the Defence Secretary, will definitely spend 3% of GDP on defence by 2034. This is the government's 10-year defence plan. We believe it's going to be announced on Monday. It's unaffordable without that commitment, apparently, to spend 3% of GDP on defence by 2034. Healey said spending 3% on defence during the next Parliament was no longer an ambition, as Sir Keir Starmer previously outlined, but it is now a certainty. So that is the front page of the Times. We've spoken about this, the FT this morning. NatWest back to full private ownership. The government has sold the last of its stake in NatWest, returning the bank fully to private hands 17 years after its £46 billion bailout.
Do you know what I think they ought to have done 17 years ago? Instead of bailing out all these banks that were run by people who didn't know what they were doing, why didn't they just write off everybody's debt? Or give everybody like £1 million or something?
I'm not a financial expert, but my understanding is the liabilities were much, much bigger than that.
Yeah, but even still, you could surely...
But you would have had a run on the banks and everything. I mean, you would have had market turmoil.
Yeah. So it's good to have a bit of disruption.
I don't think it's as simple as you're making out. But I am not a financial expert.
You don't need to point a finger.
OK, fine. Keep those messages coming in. I'm just going to hold some of those papers for after the break, actually. Hi, David and Claire. Great show. This is Alistair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alistair.
For that. It's my staple start to my day every weekend. I fear Britain is no longer great. And I'm thankful I live in Northern Ireland, which is probably 10 years behind the mess you lot have inherited over there. I'm in London once a month. I always come back home saddened by what I see. I'm sure Claire knows her daughter has a better quality of life now that she lives in Belfast.
Yes, you're absolutely right. She's just bought a house. She's just been promoted by Deloitte. She's now, you know, she's absolutely flying.
When are we visiting?
Yes, let's.
Yeah.
Go down and see Harland and Wolff, where the Titanic was built.
Yes, we should.
God said, what did God say? No man would... No, God didn't say, but that ship would not be sunk.
Yes, the White Star Line employee said not even God himself could sink the ship.
Yeah, well, anyway, back to Belfast. One of my favourite cities. Love it to bits, and you're very lucky to live there.
Darren, thanks for this. These benefits for foreigners makes my blood boil. That's what I'm asking. What do you think about this £1 billion in UK benefits going to foreigners a month? This is making my blood boil, especially when we're cutting benefits for our own disabled, people who genuinely need it. Stop the benefits for immigrants. £1 billion a month. A month? That is insanity. This is Matt in Hove. Good morning to you. That doesn't include the cost of the illegal ones either in hotels. That's £7 million a day. There are ones who are in the system claiming child out of work, housing, PIP, etc. benefits. The UK is a laughing stock. We were also talking about Axel Rudiker-Banner being able to buy Maltesers in prison. This is quite...
And getting money.
And getting money and phone calls and religious meetings. Good morning, Dr. David. I wonder if Lucy Connolly gets to buy treats and have family visits in prison. That's Hev. David, this is Steve. Reform should announce that from tomorrow, the 1st of June 2020... God, it's June tomorrow. 2025, every illegal immigrant who arrives will be retrospectively deported on the first day after the election. In fact, Reform has said that. It says that everyone who comes here illegally will be deported. No ifs, no buts, no exceptions, and arrivals would drop overnight, and Reform's vote share would rise even higher. I'm going to talk about those latest polls, actually, after the break. I'll take you through the rest of this morning's papers as well. Muldoon's not going anywhere. She's having a square sausage. This is Weekend Breakfast. Good morning.
not prepared to risk what might.
I say that Nigel Farage, people say, well, how are you going to pay for this? That's what he said in his speech. I'm going to cancel net zero, should save about 40 billion quid. No. I'm going to cancel DEI, which will save about another 20 billion quid. I will stop the asylum seeker saga. I will solve the migrant crisis. That will save 15 billion. There you go. It's like, what's that, 65,
None
70?
of that is
70 billion quid!
None of it is possible. It is economic illiteracy of the highest order.
Rubbish!
Absolute highest order.
Let me finish. It's my bloody show.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back, 7:23. That was a big sigh, Claire. 7:23 on Saturday, May the 31st. Of course, June
No
tomorrow.
sausage.
No sausage for Claire. Let's move back to the front pages. Daily Express this morning, rubbish idea, ? Residents, wait for this. I mean, the whole thing is absolutely nutty. Can I have 11 bins?
I heard you say that before we came on air this morning.
Where do you put 11 bins?
I don't know.
So householders are being burdened by an increasingly complicated and confusing rubbish sorting system.
Can we just scrap this net zero rubbish, please?
Yes.
Please? It's rubbish.
Yes, well, there are... That is a policy of a major political party. One council is offering up to 11 bins. Most areas across the UK have 3 or fewer. But if you are lucky enough to live in Conway, in North Wales, you are in double figures for waste disposal. Now, they're very lucky. They've got separate bins for paper and card, glass, then plastic cans and aerosols, textiles, absorbent hygiene products, coffee pods, batteries, mobile phones, food, garden waste and general refuse. John O'Connell of the Taxpayers Alliance said rubbish collection is a core service that taxpayers pay for, yet in many areas the residents are doing all the work, and I would agree.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the proposal that people can actually bin snatch and bin sneak inside to make sure that you're actually recycling properly, and then if you're not, they take evidential pictures and then fine you.
Oh, so I have to make sure my bin lid shuts. So I've been sort of squeezing it down to make sure, because if it's not shut, they don't take it.
But look, you've got these big behemoth bins. It's windy. It was very windy in Conway. The weather's really quite inclement a lot of the time. And then trying to get them picked up when you're in a rush.
Well, and also, so you know you're meant to wheel them outside before...
Yeah.
Well, because I'm travelling a great deal, then of course I can't do that because I'm not there on a Monday to do it. You know, it's utterly
and it's
ridiculous.
all private companies now that are contracted by the local authorities. And then they're going to employ people on minimum wage. Minimum wage, minimum effort.
Yeah. Let's move to the Sun. We've talked about this. Axel Rudicabana, furious treats for a beast. Axel Rudicabana can buy Maltesers and McCoys despite attacking a guard with boiling water, as we mentioned earlier. He's in Belmarsh. The Daily Mirror this morning, their front page, the BBC... Oh, Strictly bombshell. BBC dumps Wyn. Wyn Evans has been axed by the BBC after the scandals that dogged his time on Strictly. I was just drawn to this. Free inside, you've got a bird spotting pull-out, Claire. Just thought I'd mention it.
You and your parakeets.
I like parrots.
I know you do. You've said.
Yeah, I should say good morning to Max, the parrot.
Do, and that'll set it off.
Morning. And the Daily Star.
Your poor mate.
No, I'm really not well. Daily Star. Morning, Max. Tears of a Clown. It's no fun for clowns. This is actually...
I hate clowns.
I've always found them really frightening.
Yeah, I don't like them.
It's no fun for clowns as Gen Z don't like red noses and custard pies, but comical politicians have us rolling in the aisles, do they?
Well, who have they got? Oh, they've got Starmer at the back there. They've got Trump. And they've got Johnson.
Boris.
But who's that one?
I really don't know.
I don't know who that one is. Or maybe it's a real clown.
Oh, that probably is a real clown. And
then, Michael Gove as well.
And also, I think, just having read this earlier on, they were talking about that clowns have had to change their act. Here we are. Clowns are putting down their custard pies over fears they would offend folk. Apparently, they can't put a custard pie in anyone's face anymore because it's not funny. It was never funny, actually. You have to be careful not to upset anyone, apparently. But anyway, so that's all the front pages. Let's talk about this story, though. This is in the Times. Rachel Reeves is preparing, because Labour are very worried about what is going to happen in the Red Wall. Rachel Reeves is preparing to tear up Treasury spending rules and announce a multi-billion-pound investment package in the North and Midlands to combat the threat of reform. The Chancellor is going to use the government's spending review, which is next month, to reprioritise spending. Here we go again, from the South East to the Red Wall seats that Labour won at the last election.
Do you know what? There's just no joined-up thinking here. And do you know why there's no joined-up thinking? Because there's no joining up between the major cities of this country because of the big white elephant of HS2 and the fact that our rail services are ridiculous.
They're very expensive.
Very expensive. That's when they work. Very expensive even when they don't work. We've got some members of the Cabinet, some Labour MPs now saying, oh, we don't know if we actually want to renationalise the rails now. I've got emails through from GWR saying we're going to be rebranding to this.
How much is that costing?
It'll be borne by us.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's cheaper for me to fly than it is to take the train.
I know.
And we're supposed to be marching forward with net zero.
So I came into London the other day and I had to go after 10, but I then had to select a return train, a specific return train. But how do I know what time I want to come back? Because I don't know what time I want to come back.
You don't.
But I think I've said this before, I got on the wrong train by accident and got fined £80.
But it's easy to do.
Yeah. And I honestly didn't. I thought I was on the right train. Anyway, so Rachel Reeves very worried. She's going to borrow money to fund extra spending on new infrastructure.
How can she borrow more
we haven't got any money.
The state of the amount is going to cost us to repay it.
I know. So she hopes this new investment, which will be targeted at areas that the party won at the last general election, will calm concerns amongst Labour MPs about the rise of reform. She has ordered a review of the Treasury's Green Book, and they are going to try. So at the moment, they're basically what they're trying to do is to change the rules so the government would then give greater priority to public sector investment in areas of lower economic productivity. So that's the
which
new
makes
spending.
sense to a certain extent, but I just can't see it happening.
I can't either. But there again, equally, you could argue that places like London, which have a lot more people and therefore need better infrastructure to get people in and out, might need more money.
Well, houses in London might be a start.
Well, exactly. And obviously they're trying to counter the effects of reform. Let me just show you, there are a number of polls that came out yesterday, and I will just show you the latest poll if we can. This particular one is Techni UK, which shows quite a meteoric rise if we've got the latest poll. That's the map of the UK. Here's the poll first. This is Techni UK. Reform on 31%, Labour on 22%, Conservative on 16%, Lib Dem on 16% and Green on 9%. Now that should be a massive wake-up call to the Labour Party. Not even a year in.
Well, it really should be, but I think they are thinking we're safe. We've got 4 more years left. We're absolutely fine.
I don't think they're safe.
They're not safe. But what's going to happen? Is there going to be a snap election, John?
Let's look at the map, though. So how does this translate? And this is incredible when you look at it. For those on radio, I'm sorry about this, but what we can see is actually I can hardly see any Tory blue.
No, you can't. And well, in England. And the SNP stronghold still in Scotland, which I'm surprised about.
Well, and of course, the bellwether of that is going to be the by-election on Thursday.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
And that will be interesting to see what happens there.
Yeah.
But you've also got this smattering of Lib Dem seats, particularly down in the southwest.
Yeah.
But otherwise, a sea of turquoise.
But, you know, the Lib Dems always do well locally for local elections.
They do.
But in general elections, they don't seem to be, performing.
And I think it's worth also mentioning there may be some other by-elections coming up. And, of course, people tend to vote very differently in by-elections to general elections.
Hugely. And I just wish there was one way of joining up both elections, because it's all very well to vote on local elections for local ideas and local needs. But I think that's what we should be voting in a general election for too.
So we shall see. I mean, let's have a look at the by-elections. Let's see. I don't want to make any comment on the one in Scotland that's coming up on Thursday.
Yeah, on Thursday in Lark Hall.
It will be very interesting to see how that turns out. Of course, as you say, Scotland tribally, traditionally, an SNP stronghold.
Yeah, yeah.
And of course, you've got John Swinney,
head of the SNP, coming out to say, don't vote for Labour. Vote for us. We're the only party that can keep reform out.
Yeah, it's absolutely...
I wish SNP would get out. Shut down that shortbread Senate.
It's absolutely fascinating. Let's take a call now. Violetta is on the line from St Albans. Good morning.
Good morning, Dr. Davis.
Hello.
And of course, adorable Claire.
That's very sweet of you.
From Dr. Renee.
Oh, yes, yes. I haven't seen her for a while, actually.
Yeah, Pat. Okay.
I think we need to have a reunion of doctors in the pub.
Absolutely, yes.
Yes.
I'm an intensive care sister, by the way.
Sorry?
I'm an intensive care nurse.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, of course I am brilliant.
Of course you are. I need you when I'm seriously ill.
Absolutely, yes. And I will need you when I'm ill.
Right. So what's on your mind this morning?
Okay, Doc. About this immigration.
Yeah.
I am a foreigner. I came here from Switzerland.
Yes.
As a trained nurse. I had to marry the love of my life. A British man, a doctor of science, and a businessman. We have got 2 sons who are by now adults and highly educated. Now, on the way to the nursery and schools, once upon a time, when I was still living in my previous house for 15 years, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm listening intently.
Okay. Sorry. I've heard some kind of a strange noise in the background. On the way to the school, because I was walking my sons to socialize them, because people with dogs socialize the dogs, and people with children socialize children. And on the way to school, I would bump into that friendly lady. Let me just say that she was differently dressed than me, who is European. She had a big smile on her face. Yes, we were walking in the same direction to the same school, excellent school, nursery and stuff. But she did not speak English. Okay, I've seen her husband as well. Well, he did not look like, I'm not mentioning the nationality, as one of my doctors and consultants on the intensive care unit. Trust me on that one. They have lived in a council house, and because they have expanded their family to have 7 children in those 15 years.
Wow.
They have got the second council house. I got to the first one for the convenience, of course, to answer those boys and girls. I guess they would have the third one for the in-betweeners. I'm sorry, that is what I have to say. Who is paying for that?
Well, I think it's a very good point. I share your sentiment. Who is paying for that? Really good to talk to you, Violetta. Thank you very much for your call this morning, Violetta there from St Albans. Lots of you getting in touch. Jill in Berkshire. Good morning, David. The amount of benefits being given to illegal migrants is absolutely obscene. How come MPs, including Lindsay Hoyle, spend taxpayers' money like it's going out of fashion? I think they should all suffer like the rest of us, the working British people, and not be allowed to claim expenses for anything more. Great show. Jill, thank you for that. Let's take a voice note now. This is Sarah talking about that benefits bill. Good morning, Sarah.
Good morning, David and Claire. It's Sarah from Croydon in Surrey. It makes my blood boil talking about this benefits bill. I'm a sole trader. I run a very successful business, but my outgoings increased last tax year by 36%. If it continues, it's unviable, and my standard of living is going down as a result. I work 7 days a week. I cannot work any harder, and bills are going up, all because of the decisions of this government and the previous government, and I am livid and I'm fed up with it. I didn't receive any help during COVID because I was a brand new business.
Yeah.
And I will never, ever forgive the Conservative government for that. I was fortunate, I had savings, I had inheritance when my nan passed away, but I will never recoup that money back, so I will never forgive them. Thanks for highlighting these issues.
Do you know what? I completely agree. I have
She
a
speaks
business.
for me.
Yeah, I had a new business.
Yep.
I got no
Nor
help
did I.
in COVID.
Nothing.
I had to take a £25,000 loan just to stay afloat.
Well, you were lucky you
Which
had
I'm
the,
still-
the
well, I'm still not-
creditability
I still
to
haven't
get
paid
that.
it off.
I mean, it's just, I work a lot, trying to keep, and I'm renting.
You're always working. Yeah.
And it's just, it's so difficult. I just that call resonated with everything that I and a lot of people have gone through.
But it goes back, I think it goes back to the bigger problem, which is that no one in Cabinet has ever run a small business. They have absolutely no idea how hard it is.
No.
And in terms of things like employers' national insurance contributions,
Which
when
have
you've
now
got,
gone up.
Yeah, so you've got small businesses, and people tell me all the time, like electricians and plumbers, they can't take people on because they can't afford it.
Yeah, it's so true. And there's no apprenticeship schemes.
Well,
and there's just nothing. What was it Thatcher brought in? The YTS, the youth training schemes. If you leave school at 16, if you're disenfranchised with school or academia is not for you, leave. Join the army or get an apprenticeship.
I think it's a real travesty, actually. That
Scrap net zero as well.
Well, I would agree with that as well. I mean, the whole thing is, and also we contribute 1% of global emissions.
I know.
So what is the point?
What is the point?
And I don't think there is a point. And in fact, I was reading this morning about Ed Miliband.
11 bins.
Well,
he should be banned.
He should be banned.
Put in the bin. Ed Miliband.
Ed Miliband. Good morning, David. This is Mike in Cheshire. Regarding the bins, since you mentioned it, and recycling, we've just been informed that we are responsible for any damage to our bins, and if they need replacing, we now have to pay for our bins. The only people that actually cause damage to the bins are those people who collect them. Now we have to prove they were not responsible, or we get charged all the best.
That's ridiculous.
Do you know
Where's it good? It's like a dystopian nightmare.
You get charged for everything. So when the bin men have been, it looks like I've been burgled because they're all thrown around. They just basically dumped outside the house.
And back to weather.
And back to weather, yeah, absolutely. Good morning, David and Claire. I have two friends that require benefit assistance. One followed an accident with a broken leg, the other had a stroke. Both British, both always worked. They were both told after 3 months claiming unemployment benefit they were no longer entitled to claim because they hadn't paid enough into the system, despite working for over 30 years in their native country. How could this ever happen? But it does. Great show as always. And it's so depressing, isn't it?
It really is.
Thank you for that, Mary. Thank you. Very good message indeed. Keep all those messages coming in, please. I know many of you very upset about that front page of the Telegraph this morning. If you are just waking up, I'll just show you again. Foreigners claim £1 billion a month in benefits, which you and I and Claire are paying for. We'll take a break now. Coming up after the break, we've got all our latest sport as well. We're going to be talking about diversity, how much the civil service has actually spent on diversity, lots of other big stories. Also, Carry On films. Ofcom have been accused of censorship of Carry On films, which, quite frankly, I think are absolutely hilarious. We'll talk about that after this break. This is Weekend Breakfast. Good morning.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
I'm David Bull. This is Weekend Breakfast, joined by Square Sausage Lady Claire Muldoon. Morning.
Good morning. What a lovely morning we've had, actually.
Yes.
Isn't it lovely? It's been so quick.
Can you bring some square sausage in next
I will.
time? Yes.
I will.
And some black pudding. Oh, yes, love it. Haggis would be nice too, yes. Right, let's talk about this. This is in the Telegraph. Whitehall has spent £27 million. I mean, because we've got so much money, Claire, the government doesn't know what to do with it, right?
Pray tell, what have they spent this money on?
So they've taken this very small amount of money, 27 million quid, and they spent it on diversity in a single year. This is the first ever audit of bureaucracy wokery. This is from the Cabinet Office, right? It was commissioned by the last Conservative government. There are 380 equality, diversity and inclusion staff in the civil service. 380 of them. They're paid £53,000 on average. Their salaries cost £20 million overall. And the EDI staff in departments have been criticised for promoting contested theories such as there is a spectrum of genders, that people can be guilty of microaggressions towards other people based on race, gender or sexuality. Get rid of the whole blinking lot.
Yep. I actually read a report that I thought that in hospitals or indeed in departmental governance departments, you can't pay money now for rainbow lanyards and things like that because they are a waste of money.
Good. Well, they are.
They are.
What do they do?
They don't do anything.
I told you that at Ipswich Hospital there is a rainbow crossing. Why do you need that?
You don't need them at all.
No, you don't. So they spent all this money. Also, they then spent 800 grand, because that's not much either, on external benchmarking and membership of EDI organisations such as Stonewall, which we know...
Well, no, Stonewall, no way. And that's £27 million of taxpayers' money.
I know. 700,000 on top of that went to diversity and inclusion staff networks.
Oh, that's just ridiculous. That's a private members club for people on the fringes of society and minorities.
Fringes of society, I might pick you up on that. But
pick me up in it.
Well, no, but you just don't need it. Let's just make sure that everyone is treated equally.
Exactly.
I mean, so...
Regardless of race, creed, sexual predilection,
right,
whatever.
I agree. There are 570 diversity staff networks in government departments, 570 of them.
And there's only, what, 26 letters in the alphabet?
There are 2,965 committee meetings, so I don't know.
How many colours of the rainbow are there?
Richard of York Game Battle in vain. Richard of York Gate Battle in vain. What's that, 7?
I don't know. 7.
7.
7.
Thank you. Yeah. Reform UK has made slashing diversity and inclusion roles a key part of its policy platform. Now, let's talk about Carry On, titty you not. I love a Carry On film.
I don't like them.
Don't you?
No.
Why?
Because they're not funny.
They're very funny.
They're not.
Oh, Carry On Doctor's marvellous.
Do you like Benny Hill as well?
Yeah. Carry On, very funny. Barbara Windsor, Carry On Camping, when she did that and her bra came off. It's all very funny. Anyway, Ofcom have been accused of censorship by TV bosses in a deepening free speech row over classic comedy. Campaigners are accusing the regulator of creating a culture of fear through its rules on language and offence in golden oldie phrases such as please carry on. And basically what they're saying is that for these tiny channels who are rerunning Carry On films, Ofcom is now saying you can't show this. This is just going to offend people. Look,
how dare they tell me what I'm going to be offended by?
Well, it's young
people. Because I tell you, the
people.
threshold's quite low.
Is it?
Yeah, I'm not offended easily.
No, I know. But also, Carry On Up the Khyber.
Sorry, threshold's high then.
So Carry On Up the Khyber, right, which was written at a particular time. Dr. Prod from Carry On, you can tell I watched this. This is what I was brought up on Carry On films.
Is that what made you want to become a doctor?
Yeah, I think it was, actually. Kenneth Williams was absolutely brilliant.
Kenneth Williams is fantastic.
He was brilliant.
He was brilliant in Winnie the Wisp as well.
Yes, and what's her name? Who was matron? Hattie Jakes.
Hattie Jakes.
She was fabulous.
Yeah.
You see, and also you can't see it through the eyes of now. These were made in a particular time.
Just like we became a member of the EHCR at a particular time.
Well said, well said. Campaigners are suggesting that classic comedy should be granted an exemption from modern modern broadcasting rules because
for
of their
goodness
culture.
sake.
Well, they're right. So in the way that old cars are exempt from paying VAT, you know, for
Yes.
road tax and things,
ULEZ
or
and things.
seatbelts or
Yeah.
whatever, because you can't, I think carry-on films should have national status. By the way, just as a nice piece of very good news for the summer holidays, and I was saying that I need a summer holiday, British holiday makers may face disruption because the Civil Aviation Authority is to stage fresh strikes.
Yeah, only if you fly from Gatwick, though.
Yeah, Gatwick, but still, it's a big airport.
I don't like Gatwick.
I don't like Gatwick either.
So we're not...
It doesn't like you.
Doesn't bother us.
Which is your favourite airport?
Heathrow.
Really?
Love Heathrow.
No.
I only ever fly from Terminal 5.
City.
No,
City.
it's really interesting.
Why?
Because it's not... People have said that to me. It's really... It's not very well connected for me because I'm West. And that's not the reason I love Heathrow. I just love Heathrow. I just know it like the back of my hand. And it works
I think it
for me.
depends on the terminal.
Well, Terminal 5.
Oh, well, that...
Is there any other?
Yes, there are. The Queen's Terminal, Terminal 2. That's had a
Fly to
refurb.
Belfast from Terminal 2.
Yeah. Right, let's go to Belfast. We're going to Belfast.
We're going to Caitlin's.
And whilst we go to Belfast, let's take a break. After the break, Max Scott is joining us in the studio to go through all of the big sports stories of the day. Don't go anywhere. This is Weekend Breakfast. Good morning.
These people are part of the HR network. They are specialists who deal with equality. They will advise on policy. They will help support HR when it comes to complex and difficult cases. That's the sort of work that they're doing. You're talking about 500 people out of an organisation of more than 500,000 that are working on this particular area. It is not extraordinary. All big organisations, private sector and public sector, will have HR experts and equality experts to help ensure that the best people get on in an organisation and an organisation treats its staff fairly.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back, 7:50. Joining us now, I'm delighted to say, Max Scott, Talk Sports reporter. Good morning.
Good morning.
So, come on then, latest news, Champions League final tonight.
Yes, Champions League final in Munich, of course, live on Talk Sport this evening.
Very good
Coverage
plug.
Beginning from 6 p.m. It's obviously slightly disappointing that there isn't any British teams in the Champions League final.
Could there have been two British finals? Was Arsenal not up? Was this the same cup or?
So of course we had Spurs, Manchester United in the Europa League, which is sort of the second-tier European competition.
Right, okay.
Arsenal had historically defeated the sort of perennial champions of Europe, Real Madrid, 5-1 on aggregate.
Wow.
Went through to the semi-final against PSG, who they'd previously beaten in the earlier stages of this competition, and were absolutely wiped out. And so Arsenal really had the best chance in the latter stages of the tournament, but I don't necessarily subscribe to this view, but bottled it as many sort of Tottenham fans would like to say,
why
for example.
bottled it, or just didn't play well?
Yeah, because just when the occasion came to them, as they've demonstrated in the past couple of decades, they've not really been able to get it over the line. And so, really disappointed, I find. You know, as a neutral, I'm a Nottingham Forest fan. I'm not in part of the London football clique. And so, I want to see British teams do well. And so, in that regard, it's slightly disappointing. But I must say, PSG, who obviously beat Arsenal, have been tremendous. They have, you know, they're often criticised as being sort of the winners of the Farmers League, which is a sort of trope given to the French league, because they always win it, and the gap between them and the other teams is so much is massive.
It's huge.
But Luis Enrique, who formerly has won the Champions League with Barcelona, has come to PSG, sold Kylian Mbappe, one of the world's best players.
I was going to ask you about him. So he's gone to...
He's gone to Real Madrid.
And very good, Claire.
Yeah.
Of course, and they tanked it against Arsenal. But what he's done is he's got rid of the sort of flash, I guess, environment around PSG in terms of a football club, and he's really developed the youngsters, and they've become this swashbuckling football team that are incredibly engaging to watch. And so if there are people that aren't necessarily into European football, I'd really recommend watching
the match.
And then you've got as well these, I think, fascinating human stories behind this. Luis Enrique, who won, as I said, the Champions League with Barcelona. Tragically, his daughter died. Yeah, and so he is, for him, you know, and there are some beautiful scenes when he won with Barcelona. His daughter planted a Barcelona flag in the middle of the pitch, and so there's that. You know, there's that narrative there. But also Inter Milan, they've got this ageing team, and their captain, Francisco Acerbi, is 37 years old. He's in the twilight years of his career.
Yeah, it's very old.
He scored a crucial goal to get them into the final. But he himself, he battled with depression, alcoholism when his father died of cancer, and paradoxically, it was his own then testicular cancer diagnosis just a year later, which sort of got him through his depression. He was then diagnosed, after he went into remission, diagnosed again, and he's sort of fit as a fiddle, 37 years old, captaining Inter Milan in a European final.
Wow.
And so, yes, the football's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, but it's the
I think there will be goals, but the backstories to it are captivating, and that's partly what's so engaging about football.
Tell us who's going to win.
Yeah, I was going to ask that. Who should I bet on?
You should bet on PSG. But my hunch is Inter Milan are going to do it. They were there 2 years ago. They're defensively.
So when I lose my money, I'm going to
get.
Yeah, please do.
Get off the fence. You've given us both good reasons for both teams winning.
The bookies will tell you that PSG are going to win it. I'm telling you, and I'm the expert in the room.
Right,
Inter Milan are going to win it. So if you want to put your money, trust in me.
But you just told me to put money on PSG.
Well, I was being safe, but then he came for me, so I'm backing myself.
Right, OK, fine. Transfer news very quickly, because I know you've got to go.
Yes, so of course, transfer news has to involve, nowadays, Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
And Manchester United captain Bruno Fernandes, who we believe to be rather disenfranchised with what is going on at the club, owners making cuts constantly, and I mean, they finished 16th in the league. They're arguably the club's worst ever team in its history. Bruno Fernandes is the only silver lining to that cloud. But his agent has met with Al Hilal, a Saudi Arabian side, who have offered him an eye-watering £65 million a year deal.
What?
Yes. In order to get him before the Club World Cup. I mean, this is...
Where do I sign?
Yeah, well, quite. And so it's a question of, I guess...
Is he single?
No, I don't think he is, actually. But it's really a question of, you know, what does he prioritise? Does he prioritise trying to be a part of an important rebuild at arguably the biggest club in the world, or is he going to follow the money? And by the sounds of things, I think I know what you two would do.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a bit of a no-brainer, isn't it?
Well... I'm a bit of a sporting purist, and I'd like to think that legacy, and already being on £500,000 a week, or 350
it's
million.
immoral.
It is immoral. It's awful.
And that's the way the game's going. And you just sort of wonder, is it a bottomless pit of cash? How long can Saudi Arabia maintain?
Well,
that's right. Yes, is the answer. It is bottomless. And then, just very quickly, because time is tight, Manchester United embarrassed at their post-season tour in Asia.
Well, the embarrassment continues. They might just not lose their captain, but they went in order to raise just £8 million, which is a drop in the ocean in the world of football, because they're supposedly so cash-strapped. The club took them on, immediately after their Europa League final dismay and loss against Spurs in the final, took them to Asia on a post-season tour. They lost to an Asian All-Stars team 1-0. Right, which was incredibly embarrassing. The team had only ever played one game before that, which they'd won, and then they'd lost, and then they beat Manchester United. But last night there was a little bit of redemption. 17-year-old Chido Martin scored 2 goals. They beat Hong Kong 3-1, which of course you should expect for Manchester United. Yes. But considering the embarrassment of the season they've had, it was a nice end for them, and they've bagged £8 million.
And do you know, if they were playing in Hong Kong and other parts of China, red is the lucky colour, and of course Man U playing red.
Exactly.
It wasn't very lucky for them, was it?
Wasn't very lucky at all. Max, thanks very much indeed. Max got there. TalkSports reporter, lots of messages coming in. David, as far as comedy programmes go, all politicians should download the hilarious and very clever Yes Minister and Yes Prime Minister. I agree totally. It is so key. They might actually learn something. Love your programme. That's very kind, Deanne. Thank you very much for that. Yes Minister, Yes Prime Minister. Absolutely brilliant.
And the thick of it.
And do you know I've never seen it?
Oh my gosh, David, you need to watch it.
I know. It's on the list. It's on the list.
Capaldi is brilliant. As Malcolm Tucker.
I hated him in Doctor Who. David, I love the Carry On films, but I'm deeply offended by modern programmes such as Drag Race. But guess what? I simply choose not to watch. Ofcom are idiots. Yeah. Good morning, David and Claire. This is Annie in Notts. Good morning to you. Fab show as always. That's very kind. Thank you. Talking of bins, never realised they had decibel ratings. Oh dear, keep up the excellent chat. I too love the Carry On film. Sid James. He had a brilliant laugh, didn't he? What? I don't know why you don't like Carry On films.
They're just... Ugh.
What?
They're just not funny.
They're really brilliant. Why?
It must be an English thing then.
Is it an English thing?
Think so.
I don't know. We should broaden it. They're just deeply funny. But for me, it was Hattie Jakes and Kenneth Williams, which was so brilliant. And she was always sort of gliding around the wards, and she was always after him. So matron. Let me know, please. Is Carry On just a English thing then? So says Claire Muldoon. Yeah. I don't know. Keep all your messages coming in, please. Also, what do you think about £1 billion in benefits going to foreigners? The number 0344 499 1000. You can text the word talk in your message to 87222. You can also message us on X at talkTV. Very quickly, Charlotte says, good morning, David. My black bin was broken by the bin men. It was put back with no lid, so I contacted the council. They asked if I could prove with footage, you're right, if that was the case. If not, it would be £25 to replace it. I wrote a complaint asking if it would not be against GDPR to film their staff. The reply was, we will replace your bin free of charge. Boom, love that.
Love it. Love it, love it, love it. I think they might also be relying on the fact that most people have some Ring doorbells.
But honestly, for goodness sake.
I know.
Thank you very much. Our time is over. It's lovely to see you.
And you.
Are you off on holiday soon?
I'm not, no.
No? No? Neither am I. So there we are. Claire, it's been a great pleasure, so thank you very much indeed for coming in. After the break, we're going to be talking about all things happening in the United States, particularly about the tariffs that have been ruled that can stay in place. This is Weekend Breakfast. Good morning.
I can announce this government will begin the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the end of the Cold War. We will deliver our commitment to spend 2.5% of GDP on defence, but we will bring it forward so that we reach that level in 2027.
The answer from European capitals has been as resounding as it is clear. We are in an era of rearmament to respond to the short-term urgency to act and to support Ukraine, but also to address the long-term need to take on more responsibility for our own European security.
On Saturday, we also agreed a new £2.2 billion loan for Ukraine, backed not by the British taxpayer, but by the profits from frozen Russian assets. It is my pleasure to bring from His Majesty the King a letter. He sends his best wishes and his regards, of course, but he also asked me to bear this letter and bring it to you. So can I present the letter from the King to you?
Thank you very much. Am I supposed to read it right now?
Yeah, please do.
I will do.
I've got to tell him what your reaction is, so I need to know. I need to know.
He is a great gentleman. A great gentleman. He said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time, and he better not be right. Well, I just think he should be more appreciative, because this country has stuck with them through thick and thin. We've given them much more than Europe, and Europe should have given more than us, because, as you know, that's right there, that's the border.
What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are not
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
I can announce this government will begin the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, a very good morning to you. Just after 8 o'clock now on Saturday, May the 31st, of course, the last day of May. June tomorrow. Weather looks terrible. Actually, it's quite warm outside. A very good morning to you. This is Weekend Breakfast. Great news, of course. It is the weekend. It's World No Tobacco Day, a day that encourages people to give up smoking. And as a medic, I approve of this message.
Tobacco is an evil weed. It'll take away your breath, stain your teeth, make you weak, and burn your lungs to death.
I love that. That's excellent. Also, it's World Parrot Day today, a day dedicated to recognising the beauty and intelligence of this type of bird. There are nearly 400 types of parrots in the world. They can live up to 30 years. Amazing.
High up in the trees you'll find us, if you please, 'cause that's where parrots like to be. We pass the day all chattering away.
Also, finally, happy birthday to Clint Eastwood. The Hollywood actor and film director is a very youthful 95 today. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday to you.
Make my day. Make my day indeed. Let's move on to this hour's fascinating facts.
Today's fascinating facts.
On this day in 1904, the first ship berthed at the new Heysham port, delivered from the builders John Brown at Clydebank. The current ports served by Heysham are Dublin, Warrenpoint, Douglas and Belfast. On this day, in 1939, Terry Waite, the religious advisor to the Archbishop of Canterbury, was born. In January 1987, he was held prisoner in Lebanon after being kidnapped on a visit to negotiate the release of hostages. I had the great pleasure and fortune to work with Terry Waite, actually, on a number of charity initiatives, and I have to tell you, he is an absolutely delightful man. And on this day in 1962, Adolf Eichmann, the architect of the Nazi Holocaust, was hanged in Israel for his crimes against humanity. And those are this hour's fascinating facts.
Day before's breakfast, oh what a treat. Gather around, it can't be beat. Wake up your senses, let's celebrate. Blood's flowing, it's never too late.
Well, a very good morning to you. 5 minutes past 8 on Saturday, May the 31st. This is a weekend breakfast. A very good morning to you if you are just waking up. Lucky you. 2 hours in, 2 hours still to go. We're on air till 10 o'clock when I hand over to Peter Cardwell. Let's just look at the front pages if you are just waking up, because they are pretty gobsmacking, actually. For a Saturday, there is a lot of news around. Let's just talk about this. We've been talking about it all morning, but it's the front page of the Daily Telegraph. Foreigners claim £1 billion a month in benefits. Benefit claims by households with at least one foreign national have doubled to nearly £1 billion a month. £1 billion a month in the past 3 years, according to government figures. So this has gone up from 461 million 3 years ago to 941 million now. So when you look at these figures, the jaw-dropping bit about this, just 2 months of benefits for people with foreign nationals in those households, 2 months, cancels out the saving the government made by axing the winter fuel allowance. That is going to go down very poorly. And many people have been saying, well, how do you become eligible for these benefits? Foreign nationals become eligible for universal credit and other benefits on the same terms as British citizens once they are granted indefinite leave to remain or refugee status. And of course, this is going to make very salutary reading for the government, and clearly something needs to be done. The front page of the Daily Mail this morning. The Prime Minister has been told to sack the legal chief over his Nazi slur. This is just unbelievable what Lord Hermer did, which was to equate those people who believe that we should leave the European Court of Human Rights to 1930s Nazis. He says that, well, he basically regretted using clumsy language, but he rejected the charge. Keir Starmer under increasing pressure to sack him, but whether he has the backbone to actually sack Hermer. It's worth pointing out, of course, that Hermer is not a politician. He's another of Starmer's legal chums who was stuck in the Lords and then given the appointment of Attorney General. And I think as Attorney General, you have to be very careful what you say in public, and you cannot just speak from the top of your head about the rule of lawyers as opposed to the rule of law. And that is what Kemi Badenoch has been saying. The front page of The Guardian, Britain is facing a new era of security threat. Britain is facing a new threat with drones, artificial intelligence, other technologies changing the nature of warfare more fundamentally than at any other point in history. This is according to the Strategic Defence Review, which is going to be published on Monday. It's a 130-page document. It's been written by 3 advisors to the Prime Minister. It's going to warn of the immediate and pressing danger posed by Russia and is expected to draw heavily on lessons learned from the war in Ukraine. It's also going to focus on China. China not being described as an enemy, but as a sophisticated and persistent challenge. This has been put together by a team chaired by the former NATO Secretary-General, George Robertson. It's not going to set out fresh commitments for defence spending, but it does look like NATO is getting its ducks in a row. They are discussing this proposal to increase core defence spending to 3.5% of GDP by 2032. Within another 1.5% for cyber and infrastructure initiatives. And this would then make a total of 5%, which is pretty much what I've been saying for a long time where it should be. The Eye is talking about cyber hackers are going to be deployed to fight drones again. We've got the Defence Pledge, which is also on the front page of The Times. And also, NatWest, this is the FT this morning, has been finally offloaded by the government, which has managed to lose 10 billion quid in the process. Keep your messages coming in, though, please. Lots of those coming in this morning, and I'm asking, just in terms of those benefits, £1 million quid in benefits going to foreigners. What do you think of that? What do you make of that? Just 2 months of that would reverse the winter fuel payment cut. The number 0344 499 1000. You can text the word talk in your message to 87222. You can message us on X as well at talkTV. Let's move now to talk about all things in the United States, particularly about the tariffs and what Donald Trump is up to, because it's now time for Transatlantic Talk.
Transatlantic Talk with Caroline Faraday.
Yeehaw, Caroline Faraday. Good day.
Good morning. Good day. Are we going to Australia? What's happening?
Yeah, maybe. Actually, the sun's coming out, so it's looking a little Australian. You're looking very beautiful in your yellow.
Yes, it's that classic midnight get-up of pretending, pretending it's daytime.
I'm really sorry we're coming to you a bit later today, but it's a really... I wanted to do this at 8 o'clock because it's a big story, isn't it, about Trump and the tariffs, because a federal appeals court has ruled that Donald Trump's sweeping international tariffs can remain in place for now. This is just a day after 3 judges ruled the president had exceeded his authority. It's a huge story.
Yeah, it's really difficult, isn't it? Because you've got to try and keep up with these tariffs that have been on and off more times than a bride's nightie. 1 minute they're up, next they're down, then they're off, then they're not. Because all of this is really what it is, David, is a test of presidential powers. So Trump came in with these enormous, great tariffs, as you know, and some of those have been negotiated down. And then what happens here is it very much gets fought through the courts, and they were expecting all of these court battles. So they've had that, and they had this real blow with a court basically saying he overextended and overreached his presidential authorities. Of course, what they did then was appeal, and that appeal has come back and said, OK, actually, your international tariffs can stay in place for now. And this comes literally straight off the back of the judges saying, no, you've overstepped, you've exceeded your authority. So it has been really sort of back and forth with these tariffs, and it's very hard for the international market to kind of keep up with where they're at.
I would agree. And also, just in terms of the timeline, he doesn't have that, or they don't have that long, because the lower trade court needs to respond by the 5th of June, and Trump needs to, or the administration needs to respond by the 9th of June. So we're talking about a week, really.
Yeah, it all goes back and forth, but ultimately the sort of goal really from the Trump administration is to keep appealing and knocking it back, and then eventually getting it to the Supreme Court. As we talk about every single week, the Supreme Court is weighted with a Conservative majority, so that will be their hope, although that hasn't been kind of foolproof in terms of the Trump administration, because he hasn't just been able to kind of plough through with everything with the Supreme Court. But that really is the question, is ultimately this will kick back and forth a bit and then probably end up in front of the Supreme Court. It's also been a bit of a subject for some sort of mockery that the president isn't very happy about. There's this new acronym, TACO. Have you heard about this?
No.
TACO, that's come from Wall Street. And Donald Trump was asked about this in the Oval Office. It stands for Trump Always Chickens Out. And he was asked about this kind of TACO situation, and he was not best pleased and thought it was one of those, he likes to go, oh, that's a mean question, you mustn't say that. Yeah. It's a terrible thing you just said. Anyway, that when you hear people talking now and saying about TACO, apparently TACO is the phrase or the acronym coined by Wall Street on these tariffs of Trump Always Chickens Out.
Well, it's a good acronym, isn't it? Because you're right. I don't really know where we are with these tariffs, because 1 minute they're on, then they're off. I was just looking back at these notes, and the tariffs he then imposed, and of course then they were put on hold. He then, I think this was last week, threatened the EU with 50% tariffs. So, as you say, impossible for those international markets to work out what on earth is going on.
Yeah, and it's this negotiating tactic that Trump sees himself as this great sort of deal maker, and in you go. So he's got this negotiating tactic of sort of starting off blind, when the other side hasn't said anything, with what is really a kind of astronomical and ridiculous number. and then hoping that they come to the table and kind of concede and negotiate. But honestly, in a lot of these situations, he's ended up sort of stepping it back and almost negotiating with himself and retracting that sum before they've even got that far. So yeah, I think there is this kind of wait and see policy now from businesses, but very, very hard to try and keep up with where he's at with the tariffs.
Well, and then
like I say,
yesterday...
It's going to ping pong a little bit more.
Well, quite. And then yesterday he announced the US will double the current tariff rate on steel and aluminium imports from 25 to 50%. As, you know, we talked about, this is kind of the roller coaster. He was giving this speech, wasn't he, to an America's biggest steel manufacturer in Pittsburgh. He said there are going to be no layoffs, no outsourcing. Every US steel worker will receive a well-deserved $5,000 bonus. And quite frankly, I mean, the crowd, as you would expect, because it was a selected crowd, burst into rapturous applause.
Yeah, of course, because these areas of America, you know, he's been elected on hope. He's been elected that these places will thrive again and have the kind of industry that they had decades ago, and whether or not that is a reality or not, it remains to be seen. But, you know, that is the promise and hope that he has been elected on, is I will make, you know, the things that America used to be great for, I will make it all happen again. But a lot of people think that sort of time has moved on and that they should be looking forwards and not back, but we'll see.
We will indeed. Let's now talk about Putin and Trump. And I think, was it last week we spoke about this? That Trump is amazed that Putin hasn't responded in a more sort of positive way to him. And the US now threatening to abandon peace talks if Putin rejects a 30-day ceasefire. Where are we with this?
Yeah, so, I mean, we all can remember those awkward, terrible scenes when he had Zelensky in the Oval Office and gave him a hard time and seemed to really come down on Russia's side. And now, surprise, surprise, Trump seems to be figuring out what the rest of the world had already figured out, that Putin isn't really up for negotiating and perhaps was playing Trump all along. And this seems to be dawning on Donald Trump, and he is taking a bit of a harder stance now with Russia and kind of saying, well, hold on, if you don't come to the table with a ceasefire, then there will be sanctions. But he has been very reluctant, you know, to do that, and offered Russia quite early on almost everything they seemed to want and nothing that Ukraine wanted. Well, that position's a little bit different. So at the UN, they basically said, you need to agree to this proposed temporary ceasefire, and they said this would be Russia's best possible outcome, and that was the negotiation from the US. If Russia makes the wrong decision to continue this catastrophic war, the United States will have to consider stepping back from our negotiation efforts to end this conflict. This is also another thing that you might have noticed Trump does, is he comes in and he says, I'm going to do all of this on day one, and he thinks he's going to fix the war in the Middle East, and he thinks he's going to fix the war in Ukraine, and then he gets tired of it and his brain goes off to do other things, whether it's steel or tariffs or whatever it is. And he's getting tired of this. He's getting fed up of it. He didn't get the kind of quick glory that he'd thought of got. And a lot of it is just Trump going, being like, oh, well, let him just fight it out then. You know, he's sort of signalling that he is tired of them not coming to the table.
I mean, it's interesting this. So we saw this proposed memorandum to Russia from Ukraine, provisions for a ceasefire on land, in the air and sea, monitoring carried out by international partners. I wonder how that sort of thawed the relationship between Trump and Zelensky.
I think that thawed when he was in the Vatican. Do you remember those scenes of them sitting with two chairs opposite each other?
I mean, very powerful.
And I think that conversation was the conversation where Zelensky managed to make Trump understand that Putin didn't want the end of the war in Ukraine. What he wants is to continue to gain ground and doesn't doesn't really care about the loss of human life there, and perhaps that was the conversation, or almost certainly that was the conversation where things changed gear, and the tone between those two men started to change, and Trump became a bit more of an ally. Zelensky's very good at that, isn't he? He's very good at kind of going in and looking people in the eye and saying, you know, this is the situation and this is what we need, and he seems to do it in quite a sort of stoic, humble way, and perhaps that did appeal to Trump when he got him one-to-one, rather than that ambush situation that you saw in the Oval Office in front of the press, the whole why don't you wear a suit.
Well, I think also it was neutral ground. That would have also helped, I think, in terms of that one-to-one. And actually, as we commented it, you know, it was kind of the enormous venue and then those two solitary chairs. I think that really sort of brought it home to everyone. On a slightly lighter note, well, it's not really a lighter note, but Trump is also going around pardoning reality stars, it seems.
He's let these two reality stars who were in on fraud out of jail. And so this has led, and some others, honestly, it's so strange, isn't it, the whole pardoning people out of prison thing. But it's led to a conversation because, of course, P. Diddy's on trial for some very serious charges in New York and could face 15 years in jail. So it led to Trump being asked, would you pardon Diddy? And you got this sort of classic Trump answer of not saying no, not saying yes either, but it being this whole conversation about whether or not Diddy liked him. Because definitely with the Chrisleys, who were the reality family, you know, the daughter of the two parents who were in jail, very, very pro-Trump. And went to a fancy dinner at Mar-a-Lago, and lo and behold, mummy and daddy are out of jail. So it really is a question of whether or not you're friends with him. But yeah, he made this comment where he said, I haven't spoken to him in years, because they used to be friends. You know, they sort of commented, he's commented in the past about being friends with Diddy, but he said he used to really like me a lot, but when I ran for politics, that relationship busted up. So whether or not, I mean, this is during a trial. Isn't that extraordinary?
Yeah.
You'd be straight in contempt of court in the UK. But anyway, over here, apparently we can just, while a trial is going on, say, if he can sound guilty, maybe I'll let him out if he's nice to me.
Well, it's an extraordinary country. That's where I will leave it. Caroline, thank you so much for staying up late. I really do appreciate it, and I'm so sorry. It's just blame me. Caroline Faraday over there in the United States, and that was today's Transatlantic Talk.
Transatlantic Talk with Caroline Faraday.
So there you go. Right now, after the break, we have our head-to-head panel, and we're going to be discussing the latest battle between Keir Starmer and Nigel Farage. That's all coming up next. Don't go anywhere.
These people are part of the HR network. They are specialists who deal with equality. They will advise on policy. They will help support HR when it comes to complex and difficult cases. That's the sort of work that they're doing. You're talking about 500 people out of an organisation of more than 500,000 that are working on this particular area. It is not extraordinary. All big organisations, private sector and public sector, will have HR experts and equality experts to help ensure that the best people get on in an organisation, and an organisation treats its staff fairly.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back, 8:25 now on Saturday, May the 31st. So many messages are coming in. David, this is Stuart. Nobody should get benefits until they've paid at least 2 years of taxes. Good morning, David and Claire. She's gone, actually. Brilliant show as always. Can you imagine? Oh, yeah, we were talking about Carry On films, and I was professing my love for Carry On films, particularly Carry On Doctor, and that's probably why I became a doctor. Brilliant show as always. Can you imagine trying to bring back Love Thy Neighbour these days? Nope, I don't think we could. Half the country would faint, the other half would be writing letters to Ofcom. I was born in 1966 and remember watching it along with Man About the House. Crikey. Back when we had 3 channels and one of them was always showing wrestling or the test card. I know, that girl with the clown. In fact, I saw a picture of her as an adult and she recreated that pose. So that's Michelle in Altrincham. Thank you very much for that. David, the carrier on. I don't like Naked Attraction, but they still put that tripe on. Great show. We were talking about whether Carry On films should be rebranded as sort of with warnings on them for younger people who may find them offensive. I think they were particularly brilliant.
Have you gone raving mad?
Yes, I have. Good morning, David. Great show as always. I firmly believe Reform UK is the only hope this country has left, and people need to wake up to this and get out and vote at the next elections. 1 in 3 didn't actually vote. That is totally unacceptable. Voting should be mandatory, in my opinion. I do postal vote, and it's easy. I also love Carry On films. William in Hawley. Good morning, David. Laugh Police. When anything can be watched on the internet, this country should lose the great from Great Britain. Clearly some very passionate opinions this morning about censoring of Carry On films. Keep all those messages coming in, please. But now it's time for Head to Head.
Head to Head.
Well, joining me this morning, Tony Steen, who is Group CEO at Healthcare Management Solutions, and also joining him, Andy Williams, political commentator. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Just very quickly, your company, Healthcare Management Solutions, you run care homes.
We do.
Very difficult job.
Incredibly difficult, and not being made easier at the moment either.
So just very quickly, how would you, if you could reform it, and I'm talking from a vested interest here, because it is the thing that no government has ever tackled as far as I can see, and actually it needs to be tackled urgently, because of course then everything else runs on from that, including stays in hospital and of course elderly people not being able to be discharged.
Yep. Well, the start point has to be to sort out the funding, because at the moment the funding comes from one side, it comes from the National Health Service when people go into hospital, and then it flips over to the local authorities when people come out into care homes. You need to consolidate that, because at the moment those what we talk about bed blockers that are sitting in hospital and taking up space are not being sent out to care homes because the local authority doesn't want to take on that financial responsibility.
I know, it's not.
That's the start point. Once you sort out funding, everything starts to work better.
And of course that's going to be an absolutely monumental task, and I don't...
And can I just, I mean, as a Labour supporter, I'm so deeply frustrated that one of the first things Wes Streeting did when he became Health Secretary was say, we're going to have another review of social care and kick it, you know, there've been reviews of social care, there've been endless reviews, and we could have debates about what the right model is, but it's just time to do something and make some progress.
But it's too politically toxic, that's why
I know,
he
but
doesn't
this
want to
is my frustration, this is, you're going to hear me saying this a lot about all sorts of policy issues over the next half hour or so, is that Labour needs to realise it has a majority of 170 and 4 years left. And instead, Keir Starmer this week is going out there and taking a whole day out to attack a party with 5 MPs. Just realise you have this enormous amount of time and power and do something radical.
They're showing exactly how weak they are. They're panicking.
But this is extraordinary. So let's talk about that then. So Keir Starmer calls a press conference in the middle of somewhere. So all the press then have to troop off to see what this announcement is.
To St Helens,
to St Helens. So instead of announcing anything, and I've seen this amazing montage, he basically doesn't announce anything, but as the Prime Minister of this country, as you say, with a stonking great majority, basically turns it into a Reform UK press conference by attacking Nigel Farage. it was amazing publicity for Reform UK. There is a ticker on Reform's website showing the number of people joining. He did nothing but boost the numbers.
A strong country requires a strong opposition, and we haven't got a strong opposition. Reform have got a fantastic following, but like you said, they've got very little representation actually in government. And the Conservatives...
But wouldn't they be the opposition then?
Well, they would be if they had the numbers.
Do they need the numbers currently?
Well, it seems not, because they're managing to put panic through the Labour Party ranks.
I mean,
simply because they're popular.
Well, Chopper Hope made a great comment saying, "Is Nigel Farage living rent-free in your head, Prime Minister?"
I know, I saw that.
And it is a priceless comment, and the answer is yes.
Well, the problem is that, you know, when you're Prime Minister, the greatest asset you have at your disposal is you have the power to set the agenda.
Yes.
And the problem is Farage is setting the agenda and Starmer is following, and this all goes back to the biggest problem Labour has had over the last 10 months, which is a lack of strategy. So they've had some good ideas, they've made some bad policy decisions, but what we absolutely have not seen is A, a coherent strategy, or B, a coherent story being told about what Labour is trying to achieve.
It's a lack of leadership. They had 14 years to prepare for this, and when they came in, it was sheer panic. They put some policies out there, and as soon as...
Terrible policies.
Absolutely. We can all agree
Winter fuel allowance being
that.
one of them.
Absolutely, but, you know, it's the poll tax again, isn't it? But actually, you know, what we've got now is, you know, a sign of weakness in the face of union pressure, in the face of reform. It's this utter lack of ability to stick to a plan.
And so Andy, as a Labour supporter,
Yes.
and I think that's a very fair point, 14 years in opposition, you would have thought you'd come out with at least one
I don't
policy.
think that is entirely fair, by the way, because we had the nightmare of Corbyn and we had Miliband beforehand. So, but they still had time. There was still time.
But also in that general election, they didn't promise anything. Actually, it was very clever. It was don't vote for this lot, and I think it was a vote against from the Tories. But Starmer isn't setting the agenda. What's going wrong in Labour? Is it because you have basically got a group of very, I would say, disparate or dysfunctional individuals in cabinet? I don't think anyone has got control over their brief at all. Possibly the exception, maybe, of Wes Streeting, possibly. But what does Starmer stand for? Because I have no idea.
The guys are looking for a leader, and there isn't one.
I think if you've read Patrick Maguire and Gabriel Pogren wrote this brilliant book called Get In, which is about Labour getting re-elected and Starmer's government. And their broad conclusion is Starmer doesn't really believe anything. He's kind of a vessel for Morgan McSweeney and what Morgan McSweeney is trying to achieve. Now, the problem is you've then got a bunch of, and this is always going to be a challenge, you've got a bunch of people, maybe 60 or so MPs on the hard left of the Labour Party, who always shout very loudly. The first thing that Starmer and Reeves and others need to realise within the Labour cabinet is don't listen to them. So, for example, on winter fuel, you can, as it happens, I think that was the right policy, and I think they should have stuck with it. You turning on that is absolute madness. It's political madness.
But Tony's point about the poll tax was that actually, when you set the poll tax, payment per person was probably the right thing to do. It was badly implemented, and that caused Thatcher's downfall. This is the same thing.
Well, there's no doubt whatsoever that it's the number one most toxic issue.
Yeah, but also I think just going back to your point about Morgan McSweeney's agenda, if there was somebody with some strength, whoever it is, behind what Labour are doing, for the party to follow that and demonstrate leadership, I think people would actually follow.
I agree.
But the problem at the moment is we keep flip-flopping.
Yes.
You know, and you know, it's almost like, well, OK, Reform have said this, that seems to be working, it's becoming popular, let's do that then. You know, it's just crazy.
And to people who say, oh, well, you know, Labour are finished and we can write them off and Starmer's the most unpopular Prime Minister of all time, which is not true, by the way. Yeah, you can't. There's actually loads of time left. And honestly, we're coming up for a year since Labour were elected, and there is an opportunity, and this is what I'd really love to see, for the key members of the Cabinet to come together and go, OK, we've made a ton of mistakes, we've got time,
needs to go,
let's start again. Starmer? No. Why? I don't think he does. Well, firstly, I mean, we're done in this country with just churning through leader after leader.
Well, I don't think the Tories are. I don't think Kemi
was. Well, the Tories aren't, but they made a terrible decision, and they're about to make another one by putting Jenrick in instead.
It'd almost be better with a puppet.
Can I just? We've got the latest poll actually, which I hope we can show you, because just in terms of this, when Starmer, as I said, gave the best press conference ever for Reform UK, which he did the other day. Let's have a look at the latest polling, and this just shows the mess they're in currently. When you look at those numbers, Reform now on 31%. When I look back to 2 years ago when we were polling, or Reform was polling at 8%, to be at 31% is quite something. Actually unparalleled in political history. Labour at 22%. So actually not dropping. The worry should be for the Conservatives here at 16%, down -1. Again, they don't know what they're doing either, do they?
Well, they had a period where nothing seemed to go right. They did go through a really difficult period with COVID. You can't forget that. I just think we need a leader that people are prepared to follow. And actually, to be fair, I think, I hate to say this, Labour have got some good people within the ranks.
They do.
People like West Streeting, but actually they've got some utter horrors in there too. That's the problem.
Who? Come on, name them.
Well, okay, I don't think Rachel from Accounts is particularly impressive. And Rayner, Lammy, come on.
There are some good people as well in the cabinet. And actually, if you look at the next,
who are they?
So apart from Wes, I think Jonathan Reynolds doing an excellent job at Business and Trade. Okay. I really, really do. I mean, we've done a series of trade deals, but notwithstanding that, actually tackling some really challenging issues. I think he's done a very, very good job. I think Steve Reed at Environment is quietly doing a good job on things like the water companies.
But this is the problem. You can't quietly do a good job and it work. The guys,
I don't agree with
the
that,
guys
actually.
that are doing the bad job are the ones that are in the public eye all the time.
I think there are lots of areas of government where actually you can quietly just get on with making small differences that actually impact people's lives.
My point is that the public aren't gonna see that. They quietly get on with it in the background. What the public see at the moment are, Rachel, who comes in and says there's a £22 billion black hole, and repeats this endlessly on a loop. Well, okay,
and then
in 4 years' time, we're going to be wishing we had a £22 billion black hole.
But again, talking about dancing to other people's tune, Rachel Reeves is going to tear up her Treasury spending rules. She is now going to throw money at the red wall. The reason, of course, she's very worried about reform in the red wall.
Let's buy votes.
Exactly. And that's the point, going back to your point about Starmer doesn't believe in anything. That's what the public is saying, which is there's no sense of direction, they have no idea, everything is pretty miserable right now in the country, and they don't see any way of getting better, apart from to get rid of the Labour Party.
But it's so reactive. That is the problem. It's just react. It's a classic strategy versus tactics question, right? It's just, this week, these group of people are shouting the loudest, these headlines are bad, we're 9 points behind in the polls. Quick, let's fire some money into Boston in Lincolnshire, Richard Tice's seat or somewhere like that. And it's not a way to do sensible government. Just a very quick point on that poll. On Reform, polling at 31%, I mean, there's no doubt that is a significant landmark for them. It's worth bearing in mind that in the last Parliament, the Tories were polling 55 at one point, and they went down to a record defeat, so can change a lot.
Of course it can.
On Labour, if it wasn't for the Tories being on 16, Labour being on 22 is a catastrophic number. Yeah. That is really bad. And as for the Tories, I mean, the most underrated and under-discussed thing, I think, in British politics at the moment is that the Tories are as good as finished. I mean, on Newsnight the other night, they had a graphic up of Starmer, of Farage and of Jenrick, because people literally forget that Kemi Badenoch is the leader of the Conservative Party.
Can I just...
It's a disaster.
Can I just before we go to the break, is Reform doing well because people have lost faith in Labour and the Conservatives? Or do they see Nigel Farage as a man with a vision who understands, or at least can communicate, what he thinks is the direction that we should travel for as a country?
I think it started with Farage, but I think the nation are now we're seeing a shift, and the nation are now seeing Reform generally as being a trustworthy party that's carrying forward policies that they want. And so I think that's their greatest strength, that you can't have an entire party based on one person, but actually that's changing.
And obviously they only have 5 MPs currently, and of course the Labour Party has many more.
But as you started this section with, you know, that 5 MPs is seen as a much bigger force.
And certainly when you look at the map, which we showed earlier on, at the moment, and you're right, of course a lot can change, we have 4 more long years of this. Here's the map which shows you how this translates currently, well, constituency wise. That's
not an.
You can
kind of a pseudo-scientific.
You can refute it all you like, but there is no doubt that for a very young party, there's a lot of turquoise going on.
Yeah, of course, there absolutely is. But maybe can we talk about some of the proposals that Nigel Farage is making on the economy? Because that is absolutely.
If you like.
No?
Well, I've got to go to a break, so let's do that after the break. Let's do that after the break. Andy Williams and Tony Steen will return, and of course our head-to-head after this break. This is Weekend Breakfast. Good morning.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
8:41 on Saturday, May the 31st. I'm joined by Tony Steen, who's Group CEO at Healthcare Management Solutions, and Andy Williams, political commentator. I'm sorry, Andy, I cut you off mid-flow.
No, not at all. I mean, on the substance of Starmer's speech, which, as I say, strategically I think was ill-advised the other day, but on the substance of it, the point he was making is that Reform have now come out with a series of policies on tax and spend, and not only does it not add up, but what it actually adds up to is a plan that makes Liz Truss look like a bastion of fiscal discipline.
In your opinion.
Not in my opinion. No. So let's be clear. So let's take an example. Let's raise the personal allowance of
to
tax
20,000.
to 20,000.
Yeah.
That's lovely. Wouldn't we all like the personal allowance to be raised by £8,000, £7,500 a year? So the IFS says that will cost 80 billion. Even at the lower end of estimates, it might cost 55 billion a year. That's the same as the defence budget. How are we going to pay for that?
Well, it seems the Labour government is very good at splaffing money they don't have.
But this is a different order of magnitude. It's not comparable. Let's increase the inheritance tax threshold to 2 million. Lovely. How are we going to pay for it? Let's get rid of the 2-child benefit cap, which, by the way, I completely agree with and I think Labour should stick with. It looks like they're going to U-turn on it. How are we going to pay for that? None of these sums add up.
I think it's always the case, isn't it, that, you know, we go back to the point that Labour weren't prepared for power, and again, I don't think they had a fully funded, fully costed solution. Reform have made a mistake, in my view. They've made announcements. I think they should have waited and they should have had a fully costed, fully funded plan.
Well, Nigel Farage, Richard Tice says it is fully costed. They said that at the press conference.
Yeah, I think it'd be useful. If you look at the press, clearly the press don't see that. You know, the media, you know, we haven't had it in front of us, and I think we're not discussing it.
You went until the manifesto.
Exactly. We're not. We should have it though, because I think they're just leaving themselves wide open to this sort of criticism.
Sorry, I just want to move on to this. Benefit claims by households with at least one foreign national have doubled to nearly £1 billion a month. A month. If you look back 3 years ago, it was £461 million. It's now gone up to £941 million. And I said this right at the beginning of the show today. 2 months of benefits for households with foreign nationals would cancel out the winter fuel allowance saving. Again, just going back to your point, these are terrible optics.
Absolutely shocking. You know, when you actually look at the whole problem in its entirety, you know, the problem is that we are, despite what everybody says, and we love to moan, a very wealthy country. The benefit system is extremely generous, and people come here as economic migrants. And I think you can't solve a problem unless you're prepared to face it truthfully. And the problem is we have too many people who flip that story round on a regular basis and talk about asylum seekers, you know, people fleeing persecution. It's not the reality. The vast majority of people come here as economic migrants, and until we actually sit down and accept that, we'll never fix it.
So I agree with that, and actually on the economic migrants point, that number went through the roof because of our Brexit deal. And because
Well, no,
of the Brexit
it
deal,
it didn't. No, it didn't. It went through the roof because of the Conservative government.
Yeah, because of Boris Johnson's Brexit deal. That's what I said.
No, that's not. No, that's not the case.
That Brexit deal changed the rules on who could come into this country.
No, but the point. But you're missing the point. Yes, of course, it changed the rules, but he basically wanted to bring in more people,
which is why I said Boris Johnson's Brexit deal.
Right, but it wasn't the deal itself. No. That gave you the freedom to decide policy.
It did, and Boris Johnson made a series. So I'm not talking about Brexit itself. I'm talking about.
I was just making sure of that.
Yes, absolutely. If you look at the graph in January 2020, when we leave the EU. Suddenly it goes through the roof. It was a policy decision made by a terrible Prime Minister of a disastrous government. Now the reality is, of course the Telegraph would look at this angle, and it is an important angle to look at, but there's a much bigger picture, which is that there are 6.4 million people in Britain on out of work benefits. How can that be the case? How can it be the case that we have 1 in 9 working age adults on long-term sick?
So why is that?
I don't know, but it cannot be a reflection of reality.
It's a bizarre approach that the whole country seems to have at the moment, you know, towards anybody who's got a claim of stress or anxiety or, you know, whatever. I think we don't have a culture in this country of, you know, graft like we used to have.
But we did.
Yeah. We did, and that's the problem. I mean, I talk to many people of my generation, and this isn't a generational thing. I'm not having to go at the youth, but what I'm saying is that, you know, I know my wife, you know, she was told, as I was told, you know, well, you either go to university or you get a job. You don't sit on your backside.
Yeah.
You know, and we're not very tough, are we, anymore? You know, you were talking earlier on about carry-on films or something. I know it comes into the whole thing.
They were splendid.
They were, but we've infantilised an entire generation.
I would agree.
You know, we can't afford to upset them or offend them. They can't possibly see a carry-on film and keep their mental health. But
I think one of the other things was that under Blair, we sent 50% of kids to university to do degrees that actually were absolutely.
Well, I'm a Blairite, and I think it was the biggest mistake Blair made. I included Iraq in that, by the way. I mean, I genuinely think that was a disaster because actually, what it said was you can go off. And I went to university, but I like to think I would have done anyway. You know. 3 or 4 years, go and do your degree, and actually what we've seen is the gap between people who enter work on doing a graduate job and on the minimum wage has almost completely closed. If you do 40 hours a week on minimum wage now, you're on 24.5 grand a year, and that's a starting salary in an okay-ish graduate job.
But as a nation, you know, we got this wrong, where perhaps Germany is a good example of somewhere who got it right. You know, we basically told all of our children, that if you don't go to university, you're a failure, you're not do well in life. And the reality is, say Germany, you know, you get an apprenticeship, you become an engineer,
technical degrees,
you're respected. You're respected. You know, we have a really unique problem in the health sector. You know, people see a career in caring, you know, a vocation to start off with, you know, as being something less. You know, it absolutely isn't. It's a hugely responsible job that requires training, that we should pay better, and is so fulfilling. You know, but we're not telling that to
I would totally agree with you. How do we change that? How do we make the caring profession, and it's very complicated, but also you need emotional intelligence to do that job as well.
Unbelievable.
How do we flip that round? Because when I talk to young people, and going back to your 24,000, lots of young people have said, I'm not going to accept a job that pays under 40 grand.
Well, good luck.
Well,
yeah, exactly.
That's kind of what I think.
That's just not how it works. You have to, you know,
I know.
You have to climb the ladder. My starting salary in my first job 12 years ago was 20 grand. Now, okay, you know, inflation, whatever.
I mean, you're old now.
Now I'm old, and I earn a lot more because I've had to climb the ladder. But that's just how it works. You don't start in the middle. by definition.
Absolutely, and we see far too many people who've come in for interview with us, you know, over the years, who have this expectation that because they have this degree under their belt, they're worth God knows what. And the reality is, you've got to prove what you're worth.
Yeah.
But you know, it's that desire to work. Here's a great example. I was talking to somebody the other day about domiciliary care worker. You know, we were saying how difficult it is to recruit, and they were bemoaning the loss of Romanian workers, and they were saying they came into work and they were really unhappy if they didn't get 12 hours. Because they wanted 12 hours a day. They wanted to work, they wanted to earn. And I think people over here, we've got this message going around in kids' heads about, you know, work-life balance.
Yes,
you know.
we have.
Oh my goodness, what the hell is a work-life balance? We never talked about that when I was starting.
Can I tell you a quick anecdote about I probably shouldn't say this, but about someone in one of the graduates in my company, who we're a communications agency, right? So professional services. And he was talking about, well, I've done X many hours overtime this month. And one of our partners said, Andy, I was talking to one of the grads the other day and he said he'd done overtime. What does that mean?
What is that?
It's just,
exactly.
So there is, I think there is there's an interesting thing with Gen Z, and I don't know whether it's kind of post-pandemic or, you know, I'm not quite sure what it is.
So that's very interesting. In medicine, with junior doctors, and certainly my friends who are consultants have said to young junior doctors, we've got this really interesting case that has come in. You won't see this. It's really rare. Do you want to stay and watch this operation? And they say no. I'm going home. I've done my hours.
But actually, that's an opportunity for young people, because just by being one of the 10% of people who does go the extra mile and do that, that's your opportunity to get on.
Yeah,
absolutely.
We have to pause now just for a moment. We'll return. Actually, I want to talk about junior doctors after this break. Don't go anywhere. This is Weekend Breakfast. Good morning.
These people are part of the HR network. They are specialists who deal with equality. They will advise on policy. They will help support HR when it comes to complex and difficult cases. That's the sort of work that they're doing. You're talking about 500 people out of an organisation of more than 500,000 that are working on this particular area. It is not extraordinary. All big organisations, private sector and public sector, will have HR experts and equality experts to help ensure that the best people get on in an organisation and an organisation treats its staff fairly.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome about 8:53 Saturday, May the 31st. We're in the middle of head-to-head. Now, doctors, according to Wes Streeting, this is in the Times, have lost the support of the public and would choke the NHS by going back on strike. I'm so depressed and disappointed by this. So, Wes Streeting says he would not cave in to a demand from the British Medical Association, the BMA, to provide a 29% pay rise for junior doctors, which are now called resident doctors, I have to say now. They're balloting 50,000 doctors for 6 months of strike action. It would last until next January, despite doctors receiving the highest pay rise of all public sector workers. It's interesting, YouGov now shows 39% of the public would support doctors striking. That's come down dramatically from 52%. This would be disastrous if doctors go on strike again.
Yeah, it would. And I think, actually, Wes Streeting was right to make that settlement in the first place when Labour came into government.
22% was a lot, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a lot. It absolutely was a lot. I think the mistake was there should have been strings attached, which said you can't come back next year or the year after. And the fact they've come back for 30%, I mean, this is just... The average private sector pay increase last year was 6.3%,
exactly.
Right? So they're asking for nearly 5
Well, they
times.
got 22% plus another 5.4%.
Just gird your loins, because Labour are in and the unions are going to keep coming and keep coming and keep coming because they're too weak to stand up to them. I'm sorry.
That is the problem, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I think if you look at the train drivers, for example, and the tube drivers...
They got train guards 15%, train drivers 14.25%.
And they're quite well paid already. I actually think, by the way, on junior doctors...
I'm thinking about going to drive a train.
It really... Well, yes, not badly paid. It really brings out my inner right-winger, the junior doctors, because they swan around as if, oh, you know, you need us, we're so important. Nobody forced you to be a doctor, right? Do we need good doctors? Do we need smart, bright people to become doctors? Absolutely we do. Nobody forced you to go and undertake a medical degree. And so I know you're one of these people, David, or were one of these people, but, you know, they run around and go, well, we just desert... No, you are actually quite well paid, and you stand to be potentially extremely well paid.
That is also the point. I think one of the other issues is the amount of debt they get into during
I understand that, and it's how long is it, 8 years or however long it is that it takes to
basic
qualify?
training 5 years, but you could do 6-year course. Then you've only just started training at that point.
That brings up a really interesting point, which is, you know, if we've got people who we need desperately, like doctors, coming through the university system, should we not be spending money on that?
Well, yes, is the
country,
answer.
you know,
and I mentioned this earlier, but the healthcare policy I have written would say that actually the state underwrites your tuition if you stay in the NHS for 10 years. For
exactly,
example.
right. Exactly.
Is there? Here's and this I genuinely don't know the answer to this. Would there be a way to fast track people?
So the Labour government has looked at this. In fact, no, it was the Conservative government that looked at fast tracking. I think there's a worry with that you lose the experience and also the maturity that goes with it.
That makes sense.
Because actually you need to see an awful lot, and actually it's pattern recognition, a lot of it.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
But you've got people like, is it Doctors Vote or something behind this whole campaign, you know. And my own view is that this is the time when militant unions and unionists are going to make a name for themselves.
Well, I would agree. And the BMA, I resigned as a result because I was no longer going to.
The other thing I'd say is that, you know, I don't want to undermine the NHS because I think it's incredibly important, but we have increase the amount of money in real terms, cash terms, that we give to the NHS.
200 billion quid.
Yeah, but if you look at since the beginning of the NHS until today, by 4% every year for 70
But that's buying
years.
votes.
Well,
it's buying votes.
It's also shoveling cash into a furnace.
Yes, exactly. You know. But my point is that, you know, every politician of every stripe who comes into power knows that the sacred cow of the NHS is the way to get the public on your side, spend more money on it.
Although I'm less sure. I think
it's
I'm
changing.
less sure
it's
about
changing
that.
a little.
It is changing. Yeah. And also, I think the thing is, what you do need is to change the system entirely. As I keep saying, if you were to design the NHS, you wouldn't start from where we are
Which
now.
comes back to the original point we were talking about at the top, which is Labour has time to radically reorganise another institution. Just get on with it.
But they lack the bravery to do so.
They do right now, but they have an opportunity to change their tune.
When you think about what the NHS was designed to do, it now does something completely different.
Completely right.
You know, but if we look at things like, I mean, something simple like cataract surgery, you know, in the hands of the private sector, you are going to get serious efficiencies.
I have to draw a line at that point. That was our head-to-head today with Andy Williams, political commentator, and Tony Stein, Group CEO at Healthcare Management Solutions. Thank you very much. That was today's head-to-head.
Head-to-head.
Hi, David. This is Peter in Scotland. I'm just watching your head-to-head. How refreshing to watch a discussion without all the shouting and screaming and blaming each other, and actually having an adult conversation about what's going on in government. And carry on isn't just an English thing. That's Peter in Scotland. No, it was marvellous. Keep all those messages coming in, please. I'm asking this morning, what do you think about £1 billion going in benefits going to foreigners? Keep all those messages coming in. After the break, I'm going to be talking about a new blood test to test for cancer. Don't go anywhere.
I can announce this government will begin the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the end of the Cold War. We will deliver our commitment to spend 2.5% of GDP on defence, but we will bring it forward so we reach that level in 2027.
The answer from European capitals has been as resounding as it is clear. We are in an era of rearmament to respond to the short-term urgency to act and to support Ukraine, but also to address the long-term need to take on more responsibility for our own European security.
On Saturday, we also agreed a new £2.2 billion loan for Ukraine, backed not by the British taxpayer, but by the profits from frozen Russian assets. It is my pleasure to bring from His Majesty the King a letter. He sends his best wishes and his regards, of course, but he also asked me to bear this letter and bring it to you. So can I present the letter from the King to you?
Thank you very much. Am I supposed to read it right now?
Yeah, please do.
I will do.
I've got to tell him what your reaction is, so I need to know. I need to know.
He is a great gentleman. A great, great gentleman. He said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time, and he better not be right. Well, I just think he should be more appreciative, because this country has stuck with them through thick and thin. We've given them much more than Europe, and Europe should have given more than us, because, as you know, that's right there, that's the border.
What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are not
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, a very good morning to you. Just after 9 o'clock now on Saturday, May the 31st. This is Weekend Breakfast live from London. Great news for you this morning. It's World No Tobacco Day today, a day that encourages people to give up smoking. And as a medic, it's World Parrot Day today, a day dedicated to recognising the beauty and intelligence of this type of bird. There are nearly 400 types of parrots in the world, and they can live up to 30 years.
Four little parrots, many colors on their wings. Four little parrots, chatting loudly all day long.
Where do you get these? Also, happy birthday to Clint Eastwood, the Hollywood actor and film director. Is a very youthful 95 today. Happy birthday.
Make my day.
Well said. Make my day. Right, let's move on to the final hour's fascinating facts.
Today's fascinating facts.
Right, on this day in 1578, English explorer Martin Frobisher sailed from Harwich to Frobisher Bay in Canada. Over time, he brought home 1,500 tons of gold ore. After years of smelting, though, it was realised that the presumed gold was merely worthless iron pyrite, which is also known as fool's gold, that was later used to pave streets in London, leading to the myth that the streets of London were paved with gold. On this day in 1678, the Godiva procession, a commemoration of the legendary ride of Lady Godiva, born in 990 AD, was instituted on this day as part of the Coventry Fair, and it was celebrated up until the 1960s. Now, according to the popular story, Lady Godiva took pity of the people of Coventry, who were suffering grievously under her husband's oppressive taxation. Her husband agreed to repeal the taxes only if she stripped naked and rode through the streets of the town, clothed only in her long hair. Now, Lady Godiva agreed conditionally that all people should stay indoors and shut their windows. But one person, who was a tailor, who was called Peeping Tom, disobeyed the proclamation and was struck blind. And on this day in 1859, the clock in the clock tower of the Houses of Parliament was started with the bell, Big Ben, sounding for the first time on the 11th of July, 1859. And those are this hour's fascinating facts.
Weekend mornings we're taking flight. With David Bull, everything feels right. Weekend breakfast, shining like the sun.
Good morning. 5 minutes past 9 on Saturday, May the 31st. This is Weekend Breakfast, and I'm David Bull. 3 hours in, 1 to go. Let me just show you the front pages if you have just woken up. This is just a shocking story. Foreigners claim £1 billion a month in benefits. This is absolutely eye-watering. Benefit claims by households with at least one foreign national have doubled to nearly £1 billion a month in the past 3 years. So they were 461 million in 2022. It's gone up to a staggering 941 million in March of this year. Now, when you then do the numbers of this, 2 months of these benefits basically would cancel out the 1.4 billion the government saved on the winter fuel allowance. So you can suddenly see how toxic this is for the government. Now, people have been saying, how do you claim benefits? Well, foreign nationals become eligible for universal credit and other benefits on the same terms as British citizens once they are granted indefinite leave to remain or refugee status. This is a former Tory Health Minister, Neil O'Brien, saying the growth of benefit spending and the rate of migration are both much too fast, and the government is doing far too little to change either trend. Migrants know that if they can make it to the UK, they will be allowed to stay. As long as that is true, we will see more and more coming. Our soft-touch welfare stakes makes this worse. That's the front page of the Telegraph. The Daily Mail talks about Lord Hermer. This saga rumbles on. And the headline this morning is this: the Prime Minister told to sack legal chief over the Nazi slur of Keir Starmer is under mounting pressure to sack his Attorney General for likening right-wing politicians to Nazis. Cabinet ministers and Labour MPs have turned on Lord Hermer. He basically invoked 1930s Germany. He criticised the Tories and Reform UK, who have dared to say, well, maybe we need to leave the ECHR. He said he basically has compared them with 1930s Nazis. He yesterday was forced to apologise for his comments. He regretted using clumsy language, but still rejected the charge. That is the front page of the Mail. The Guardian this morning focuses on Britain facing a new era of security threat, NATO getting together, trying to approve spending of up to 5% of GDP on defence, 3.5% on traditional defence, and another 1.5% for cyber and infrastructure initiatives. The iWeekend talking about the same story. Cyber hackers will be deployed to fight drones on the battlefield in a new era of warfare. And the Times also talking about the same story, defence pledge by Labour. Those are the big stories this morning. We were talking about the NHS earlier on, actually. Good morning, David. This is Paul. I think the majority of the British public now look at the NHS in the same way we look at Labour, the Tories and our justice system. We no longer trust or admire the NHS. That's kind of what I was getting at, saying that I think opinions are changing towards the NHS. Look, when the care is great, it's amazing, but there are such holes in it. And of course, the big worry for me is the junior doctors going back on, or at least balloting to go back on strike, asking for just ridiculous pay rises on top of already what they got before. Good morning, David. This is Malcolm in Hampshire. I've been voting since the early 1970s. I have never witnessed anything as shambolic as what we're experiencing now. Never have I witnessed such low standards in the ministers of state, and never have I witnessed such an immiserated populace. Good morning, David. I'm enjoying the discussion this morning. Just before the break, you referenced the poll that showed an electoral map with the implication for seats won. I did. Can I just check with you, are Reform UK still in favour of electoral reform and changing from first past the post? It's not that long ago you were saying how terrible the current system is and it needs changing. Is that still your position? I still think first past the post is a very difficult system. Personally, I think PR is a better system. There are other people in Reform UK, like Anne Widdecombe, who vehemently is against PR and wants to keep first past the post. So it's kind of different people have different thoughts on it. David, all Reform needs to do is let the Labour Party destroy themselves. The Tories are finished. Just drip feed little snippets to the press. Sit back and watch the fireworks. Little acorns, David, little acorns. Keep all of those messages coming in, please. Lots more to talk about this morning, though. And I want to move to this now because I think it is a story that many of you will find particularly interesting. A revolutionary blood test that would allow personalised cancer treatment is to be rolled out on the NHS, talking about when it is great, in a world first. This is a technique called a liquid biopsy. It will become the standard test for lung cancer. It will also be offered to thousands of women with breast disease. It is a significant shift. The rapid test will be offered to 20,000 patients this year and could soon be expanded to cover 6 types of cancer. Well, joining me now, I'm delighted to say, is Professor Pat Price, consultant oncologist and co-founder of the Catch Up with Cancer. Good morning, Pat.
Good morning.
Really good to talk to you. I think we last spoke in 2023, which amazing where the time goes, actually. But can you just sort of outline why this is so revolutionary and what your expectations are for it, or at least your hopes for it?
Yes. So we know that cancer happens when our DNA gets mutations and we can't stop it growing. Now, some of these mutations now can be targeted by drugs to stop it growing. Great. This is called targeted therapy. Now, to know if you can have the targeted therapy and which target suits you, we have to currently take out the tumour, look at it, and then extract the DNA, and it takes a while. Now, we've found that there's circulating bits of this DNA already in the bloodstream. So you just need to take a blood test and they can look at it, and it's quicker, up to 2 weeks quicker, and saying, yes, you have the mutation, you can have that drug. So that is going to speed things up for patients and be a lot easier. So this is good news, good technology.
Amazing technology. Are you surprised by its advent?
No, I think we've always known that there are circulating cells or bits of DNA that likely be shed from tumours. It's quite difficult to get that technology to find the tiny bits and then use that DNA. So it's an incremental improvement and will make things a lot easier and quicker.
And so the idea is to try it with one particular type of cancer, lung cancer, and then to roll it out possibly to others. Just in terms of so taking a blood test and then looking for these tiny changes in DNA. What sort of efficacy are we talking about in terms of sensitivity, specificity, making sure that you know what you are seeing is actually reflected in the body?
I think that's right, because you've got to make sure that is the right thing, and that's where the trials have been done. Less than 50% of people have these circulating DNAs anyway, so not everybody's going to get them. And also, we need to have the drugs that are targeting that mutation, you know, so they're mainly in lung cancer. If people have a certain type of lung cancer, there is a range of things. Have they got Alt-T, all these different ones? And so there are drugs for them. It's the drugs that do the work. And we haven't got those drugs everywhere. But lung cancer, yes, that's where it's been rolled out.
It's extraordinary, actually. If I look back to my training, just the way that oncology has moved on, that we are now, you know, as you say, when normally if you have symptoms, you've developed quite severe cancer, you might then have a biopsy, sticking a needle into a tumour, looking at the cells, deciding what treatment to give. And often in the past, certainly, cancer treatment has been pretty horrific. Is it fair to say that we're actually sort of reaching a sort of zenith of treatment, though actually with the new drugs that are coming online, we're starting to really have a game-changing scenario?
Yes, I think it's not just with the drugs, because obviously as we know more about cancers, we can get targeted drugs better. There's also, of course, immunotherapy, which treats a lot of cancers, and that's really where the big breakthroughs are. But remember, there's other more precise treatments in surgery, where we can do much smaller surgery, laparoscopic, robotic, you know, protect patients. And my own area, radiotherapy, much more targeted. We used to treat big areas. Now we can precisely pinpoint it with AI and tracking. So technology has helped us treat a lot of patients much more accurately and precisely with less side effects, and that is leading to improved survival, which is great. Obviously, we're not there for everybody yet, but every small step helps.
Yeah. You mentioned immunotherapy there. I do a lot of programs on various medical topics, but the understanding of the immune system, and that's what you're talking about with the immunotherapy, so the way that our immune systems work and understanding those mechanisms has, as you say, completely revolutionised treatment for many conditions.
I think that's right. And it was a discovery that showed that tumour cells produced a protein, this PD-L1, and it acts, as people say, like an invisible cloak. It lets the cancer go around the body, and the immune system, which usually attacks things that aren't good, like viruses and stuff, couldn't see it. And now these antibodies that can basically block that PD-L1, take that cloak off, and then, great, the immune system can attack. And really, that has been a revolution over the last 10 years, and that will become more and more and more, and that's exciting. But of course, remember, often this is for advanced disease. We want to have, obviously, patients treated, diagnosed earlier when it's much simpler to treat earlier stage. And of course, we've still got this problem in the NHS now. The cancer pathway from coming in to getting your treatment is slow, it's broken. There's a lot to be done just getting our ordinary treatments through on time as well for better. So lots to do, but exciting for the future as well.
So just in terms of this liquid biopsy, obviously we're still in sort of the trial period. Do you envisage a sort of position where, if successful, we'll then start testing, say, all 40-year-olds with a blood sample to look for DNA fragments, that very early cancers? I
think that's a one step far at the moment. This test at the moment is for patients who do have cancer, right?
Yeah.
And particularly once you've got spread of cancer, or in lung, when you're diagnosing it, you're taking the biopsy, you've got to have a biopsy and look and see if it's cancer anyway. But I think for screening, that is, there are work going on about circulating cells, all this type of thing. People are working on it, but we're a long way yet from saying this is a screen, to be fair.
Perhaps we could just broaden the conversation just to talk about cancer generally. Lots of people watching this programme or listening to this programme will have been affected by cancer. 1 in 3 of us or 1 in 2 of us will get cancer of some type. What's your message to people now? Because I'm always amazed when people say, well, so-and-so has cancer, and I always ask, well, what type of cancer is it? Because, of course, they're all very different, and I'm amazed how infrequently people seem to know the answer.
I think that's right. I think my message to people is I know it's not nice. We must talk about cancer and slightly normalise it a little bit. 1 in 2 people will get cancer. Everybody knows somebody. But the more we can talk about that, the more people will present with symptoms, because people are scared. Of course they're scared. So they don't present. We want people to go to their screening tests when they're invited. Still only 62% of women go for breast screening. This is awful. We must get people to go for screening if they've got symptoms, present early. And then if they are diagnosed, to be very positive about their treatment. Remember, half of people diagnosed with cancer will survive 10 years anyway. So at the same time, we must be also very conscious that there are some people who have very bad cancers and who are not going to make it. But the more we can talk about it, and this is part of life, then the more that we can support people and share if the news is really bad, but for others, help them get tested and go for their screening. So there's a lot we can do. And of course, don't like to say it, lifestyle, stop smoking, cut down the alcohol, exercise, all these sorts of boring things. But probably about 25% of cancers, we can affect our risk by what we do.
I mean, it's quite interesting you mentioned alcohol there. Professor David Nutt was saying that actually he reckons that, I don't know if you saw this morning, he was sort of talking about that actually safe levels of alcohol is 1 drink a year. I nearly fell over.
I think he's thinking about it in a number of effects of alcohol.
Right.
Certainly we know alcohol increases your risk of 7 different types of cancer, including breast cancer and colon cancer. So the message there is cut down.
Yeah. And then, and also, I suppose the other message to give is that if you go for these screenings and you catch it early, it's much more treatable and your prognosis is so much better.
Oh, yes. And particularly, look, I know myself, you get the screening letter, it arrives, and you're thinking, I don't want to think about that, I don't want to do that, it might be... Just embrace it. Remember, if you go for something like breast screening, the chances are that you're absolutely going to be fine. It's only a very small number. But if it's you, well, great. Caught it early, easy treatment, probably cured, win-win.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Brilliant to talk to you, as always. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me this morning. That's Professor Pat Price, consultant oncologist and co-founder of the Catch Up with Cancer. If you have been affected by cancer, then obviously 1 in 2 of us do get cancer. So, as Pat says, we need to normalise it, talk about it, and actually make sure you do go for your screenings much earlier on. But this is extraordinary, really. If we can roll out this blood test to detect 6 cancers, which is going to take some time, but it will be, the NHS will become the first health service in the world to roll out this blood test first approach to diagnosing lung cancer. So as I say, when it's good, it's really excellent. I woke up hearing you say we're giving £1 billion away to foreigners. Are these foreigners that come here going to university? Are they allowed to use the NHS? That figure, including illegal immigrants, is shocking. That's Helen. Thank you for that. Yeah, I was talking about that, and the fact is that we've got a major problem in terms of people coming to this country and then being able to claim benefits, use the NHS, and so on. And, of course, just 2 months of that is the same as the winter fuel allowance that was ditched under the Labour government. Annie in Lincolnshire, good morning to you. Good morning, David. Excellent head-to-head. Can we please have your speakers back again? We also thought the same, and actually. As my dad, a union man, used to say, there are 2 sides to every argument, and you need all the facts to make a decision. I couldn't agree more. P.S. Bring back all the old comedy programmes, including the Carry On films. Which was your favourite? That's what I want to know. I think Carry On Doctor, or Carry On Matron, possibly are my favourite. Dr. Bull, talking about being offended, this is Graham, and having trigger warnings on Carry On films. To my recall, there was no swearing, no sex, but plenty of innuendo, Dr. Prod. Yes, there was.
Oh, hello.
Yes, hello. On the other hand, I was on a train to Leeds this week at 7 o'clock. There were 2 tattooed couples vaping with 3 empty cans of beer, plus with every other word rhyming with duck. I should have had a trigger warning when I bought my ticket. Well said.
Have you gone raving mad?
Yeah. I have, yes. Good morning, David. So Morgan McSweeney runs Labour, but no one voted for him. Very fair point, I would suggest. Now, this is Keith in Durham. Good morning, David. Benefits should only be paid to people who've paid into the system. If you paid nothing in, you get nothing back. Unfortunately, this government are treating foreigners better than its own citizens. This will come back to bite Starmer. Hi, David. Always such a great wash. Thank you very much. No immigrants should be in receipt of benefits until they contribute financially to the economy positively. Quid pro quo for every single one of them. TV programmes. Imagine Spitting Image now. That was so brilliant. They brought it back, actually. It didn't work. It destroyed public figures, characters hilariously. Imagine the woke, bland version now, so no one would feel offended. I'm just thinking about Norman Tebbit, actually, his particular puppet, if you know what I'm talking about. And Margaret Thatcher, when she ordered steak and they asked, what about the vegetables? And she said, they'll have what I'm having. Remember all that? Right, keep those messages coming in. What do you think about £1 billion in UK benefits going to foreigners? I'm just grinning at that and their Carry On films. Right, talking of Carry On films, Carry On Denia will be taking place after this break. This is Weekend Breakfast. Good morning.
These people are part of the HR network. They are specialists who deal with equality. They will advise on policy. They will help support HR when it comes to complex and difficult cases. That's the sort of work that they're doing. You're talking about 500 people out of an organisation of more than 500,000 that are working on this particular area. It is not extraordinary. All big organisations, private sector and public sector, will have HR experts and equality experts to help ensure that the best people get on in an organisation and an organisation treats its staff fairly.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. This is Talk 926. Good morning, Dr. David. This is Christine on the Isle of Wight. Fascinating cancer interview. Thank you. The figures of 1 in 2 of us getting cancer now are shocking. I'm sure it wasn't all that bad not so long ago. How much is being done to find out why it's so much more prevalent now? Well, as Pat says, of course, we're better at diagnosing it, but also our lifestyles have a lot to play in it, particularly tobacco smoking, drinking too much alcohol, being overweight, all of those things have a big part to play. But obviously we are diagnosing it much earlier and we're much better at it, and the outcome is better as well, as she was talking about, that we've now got, instead of kind of that broad-based chemotherapy, we're now using these immune drugs which are so clever and so targeted, and some of the results that I've seen are just extraordinary. Sharon in Staffordshire, how can these people come into our country illegally and get the same rights as a British citizen? I think it's on everyone's mind this morning. Keep those messages coming in, please. What do you think about £1 billion billion in UK benefits going to foreigners. Let's now talk to Steve Denyer. Carry on, Denyer. No.
Hello, good morning. How
You're
doing?
better, are you? Because you've not been very well.
Thank you, yes. It was a kind of throat infection, so a week ago, completely lost my voice, which is a nightmare.
Well, it's a blessing.
Well, you know, many people have said that. Yes. And then I was doing Chris Evans' show this week.
Oh,
so
well, you're very
showbiz. It's a bit like, you know, Madonna going on stage at Wembley and she can't do half the hits. It was a bit like that.
But anyway, and it went well, did it?
Really well, yeah, thank you, yes. It was part of a course of antibiotics, 5-day course. And you know when you're at the stage where I'm fine, but it takes a while just for the voice to completely get back, but it's back.
Well, I messaged you because I was a bit worried because you were really not very well at all.
No, not at all. It really hit me. It was kind of like it was bad, and then it was good again, and then it really got bad. So it took about 2 weeks. By the way, Kenneth Williams.
Yes, this is a brilliant story. So
You
Kenneth
didn't know this?
No, I didn't.
Okay,
so Kenneth Williams, my hero.
Yes, I'm related to Kenneth Williams.
That's too funny.
We did the family trees. It's my granddad's, okay, picture this, my granddad's brother's side of the family. So he was part of the family. My parents have got pictures of Kenny, as they called him, and the whole family together at old kind of, you know, do's and what have you. But apparently as a kid, I did meet him, but I was very young. He was young when I was young when he passed, you know.
Yeah.
But what a legend. That's like my secret fact that I like to bring out at parties.
I mean, Carry On films I still think are very funny.
Oh, they're amazing.
Yeah.
They are utterly amazing.
They are utterly
him, Charles Hawtrey.
It was the innuendo in them. That, I mean, it was blatant.
I grew up with those movies.
Yeah, so did I.
What's your favourite one?
I still think Carry On Doctor, Carry On Matron.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, it had to be because of Hattie Jakes, and she was just so brilliant, and Kenneth Williams in that as well. And, you know, she was always chasing him, wasn't
Carry On Abroad, where they go to Spain.
Where they open the cupboards.
Els Bells, do you remember it?
And it was in those package holidays in the 1970s.
it.
And they opened the cupboards, and there was the people next door, and they'd put the back of the wardrobe in.
It's brilliant.
Brilliant.
Carry
On Up the Khyber.
Oh, exactly. One of my favourites.
Yes. Anyway,
okay.
Let's sort of do a gear change.
Can I ask you a question first of all? I just thought our audience, our lovely listeners and viewers would love this. Avatars are coming back. We'll get into this in a bit. You know, like the ABBA thing where you can go and see these. With the technology is so good now.
It's so
they
brilliant.
reckon they could bring anybody back. So I've got a question for everyone listening in right now. If you could see anybody, go and see an Avatar show, who would you pick? Whether they're with us or without us. If you got one person that you would love to see a bespoke show, a bit like the ABBA show, and we'll get into this in a bit.
I've got an answer, but I would have been ABBA, but obviously they're already around. But
yeah. Okay. Should we talk about it in a bit?
Yeah, we'll talk about it in a bit. Right. So in one of the papers this morning, this is about Wyn Evans.
Yeah. So this follows on this.
Here we are, the Mirror
exclusive.
BBC dumps Wyn.
Sun did a big interview with him a couple of days ago where he said, you know, a few things have happened, I've become a scapegoat, but it would seem that he was on like a rolling 1-year contract with the BBC, and it would seem that they've terminated that contract. It comes kind of 3 or 4 months after he's dropped from the Strictly tour. Do you remember?
I do.
I won't tell you what he was alleged to have said, but it's all a bit grim. And do you know what, a bit unsavoury, and the optics are bad. You also had, do you remember when he was on Strictly and he kind of put his arm around? It just looks a bit weird, didn't it? The whole thing looks a bit weird. Now, what he's saying is he was doing a show for BBC Radio Wales.
Right.
And this is what he was contracted to do. And that contract's been terminated. So he's going to be doing that radio show, a bespoke radio show on his own social media platforms that he's announced. He's been around since, do you remember 2009, those Go Compare ads?
Well, of course I do. That's
which
how he
made him a household name, didn't they? Yeah. So, seemingly, like a whole raft of people, he's someone who had a really decent career, lots of opportunities, and he seems to have kind of fallen, upon this kind of, on this sword of being called out. People saying, you know what? You can't behave like that. You can't say these things.
You can't.
And the BBC are having to put up with a raft of allegations with other people.
So, well, I was going to ask you about because the Mirror says one expert last night revealed he may not be the corporation's last big name acting in its misbehaviour.
No, I'm hearing there's loads of people now. I think what's happened is, you know, since we've got the Hugh Edwards thing and other things that have really rocked the corporation, some might say that maybe there's never been a better time, if you've got a problem with someone, to actually speak up now. The BBC got a terrible problem with apparently looking after their stars, and other people not feeling that they're welcome to complain when complaints need to happen. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. We've had a few names, haven't we, over the, you know, Greg Wallace and people like that. Gino DeCampo's been having problems. You know, all of these people denying what's been said against them. But the point is, things have been said against them. So watch this space.
Crikey. Let's be careful what we say. Russell Brand latest.
Yes, so he was in court yesterday.
I saw.
He's pleaded not guilty to raping 2 women, sexual assault charges dating back, I think it's kind of like almost 30 years. So there will be a court case, and it will happen next year. We've got till next June to wait. All he said, obviously he's denied all of these allegations. All he said is when he was a younger man, he was a fool. He said this.
Right.
He said he was a different person. He's now, you know, a family man. He's got a wife. He's got kids. So it's interesting to see what happens, but it's going to take a whole year for this to get to court. So it's early June next year.
But I remember when he sort of shot to prominence, he could do no wrong.
Yes.
And the channels were almost fawning over his... But from what I understand, almost fawning over his sort of lascivious behaviour, his lifestyle. They kind of like loved all of that. He was an anarchic bad boy.
Yeah, that was his act, wasn't it?
I guess.
That was his act, but at different times. Interesting enough, with Russell Brand, we were just talking 20 years ago. It's literally just 20 years ago. I always remember seeing him for the first time on Big Brother's Big Mouth.
20 years
20
ago?
years ago, that was. And, you know, now when you look back on old YouTube clips, you go, well, I mean, that wouldn't be allowed anymore. This wouldn't be allowed anymore. But that was his act. It very much. He was this kind of, you know, sex god,
he
if
was,
you like,
yes.
in the mid-noughties. So
I just remember the medallions and the shirts that didn't do up.
Exactly that. And then, of course, he went to America, became a huge star.
He did
married
movies,
Katy
didn't he?
Perry as well. Yeah, huge movies. I mean, recently he was in the remake of one of the Agatha Christie films, Death on the Nile. He was on that just before this huge kind of... Do you remember it was the Sunday Times and Channel 4 expose? That was now 2 years ago. And seemingly... everything's gone quiet. Lots of showbiz friends have kind of ditched him. He's now moved to America. He's come back for this court case. So we've got a year to wait. Fascinating case, this, as to what we're going to learn.
So what's it done to those movies that he was in? So I assume do they play them anymore?
Well, they're on streaming. So the Agatha Christie one is. The question is, what will happen after this court case?
Oh, quite.
All eyes on this court case. But we have a whole year to wait. And, you know, that would... obviously, they've got to gather witnesses, evidence, all that kind of thing. You know, a trial will happen, and we'll see what happens next summer.
Golly. Taylor Swift. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, Taylor Swift is an incredible, like a force of nature. She's always had this problem with her back catalogue. She's bought back stolen albums, okay, for 360 million. Basically, she lost lots of rights to the earlier stuff, because they were sold. They were sold without her permission. So if you remember, she's recently kind of re-recorded lots of stuff as Taylor's versions. It's a really good way of dealing with this. She's like, OK, I may have lost the rights to the original recordings. I'm going to re-record them slightly differently, maybe acoustic, maybe change some of the lyrics. So she's kind of clawed back loads of money, and now she's bought back her rights, but they've diminished because she re-recorded the songs in any case.
So it's cheaper for her to buy them?
Much cheaper for her to buy them.
Oh, that's clever.
So there's 2 albums that fans were waiting to be re-recorded as Taylor's versions, and I don't think that's going to happen now, but it would seem, and she's always been ahead of the lot. So they reckon that she's bought this back for 360 million, which is just about like a tenner in her fortune, isn't it? She's so rich. She's so rich, but she really is. She's like a mogul, isn't she?
Is she still
really
chums with Ed Sheeran?
Apparently so.
Is she?
Apparently so. Yeah. Do you remember he was on tour with her last year? So he went on the Eras
I've told
tour.
you this story before, but in my hometown, I was somewhere nearby. But anyway, the rumour went round that Ed Sheeran and Taylor Swift were seen in the Crown, and that was like in the middle of this place,
really,
in Framlingham. Yeah,
I think they're really good friends.
Yes,
they
are.
were right the way Labour.
But,
Very
can you
talented
imagine
people.
Taylor Swift in the middle of Suffolk? I mean, she'd be like, what is this? I don't know, maybe.
Down in baby Guinnesses.
Well, that's right,
You know.
yeah. B-52s or something else, or non-alcoholic,
Yes,
obviously.
of course, yes.
Lots of messages coming in about the
lovely.
avatars.
Okay.
Can I give you a
Of course
couple
you
there? Good morning, David. This is Alan in Staffordshire. Good morning to you. I love the Weekend Breakfast show. So much content and subject matter. Now, my easy answer to the music avatar is to bring back David Bowie through all his stage and album personas. Are you happy with that one?
That would be absolute classic, wouldn't it?
It would. But I saw some other ones. This is Joanna in Salisbury, one of our regulars. Good morning, Joanna. Hi, David and Steve. Who would I bring back as an avatar? Well, first of all of the Carry On team, although they would die sadness at what we've become, I agree. A 25-year-old... It's very specific. A 25-year-old David Cassidy, my teenage heart.
There we go.
Yes, I know.
Someone's got
Joanna, lie down.
Look at that. Calm down, Joanna.
She'll need a cold compress. Oh, a 25-year-old David Cassidy. This one says... who is this? David, I saw them for real as a 17-year-old. The very biggest Avatar show would be Led Zeppelin. Obvious, but there's often good reason for the obvious. That's Mark in Norfolk.
It's interesting. The first person I went to see was Whitney Houston as a hologram.
Good
but
shout.
it was rubbish. So somebody stood up and they got in the way of the hologram. It was like, somebody standing up in the cinema. What we've got now is, and the ABBA thing has proven this brilliantly,
it's so
you can
good.
do a bespoke show in a special arena. Remember that? That arena that was built for the show.
I go past it on the DLR.
Yeah. And it's amazing, and they've just kind of updated the show. There's a new 15 minutes in the show. Have
they changed it?
Brand new, that's starting this week. So you've got a brand new 15-minute segment that's just been included in that show. So even if you've seen it already, you should now go and see the new version.
Do you know what songs are in the new 15 minutes?
I don't, but apparently it's great, and there's a new bit where they address the crowd as well.
So I've seen it twice. The first time I told you, it was really weird. I went with my brother, and we were both in right standing, and so you could dance and everything.
Yeah.
But we both were so emotionally sort of turbocharged by the whole thing. I burst into tears, as did he. But I think it was to do with the songs being evocative of when my father was alive and being on a road trip going to France. It just shows how powerful music is.
Absolutely. Done in the right way. I've heard from so many people that show, they've gone for to dance and you end up really emotional, because it does. Music brings back, done well, brings back beautiful memories of times gone by, good times, bad times, people with us, people that we've lost, and that's what music does so well.
Yes,
so well.
Absolutely.
So well.
We'll take a break now. We'll talk about some more entertainment news after this break, and also, who would you like to see as an avatar? That's Steve's question of the day. This is Weekend Breakfast. Good morning.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back, 9:41. Dean, get out. 9:41 on Saturday, May the 21st. Honestly, he hasn't been in, this is the producer, hasn't been in here all morning.
Is it because
you're in here and he suddenly wants to come in?
What's going on?
Yeah, I don't know.
He's either a massive fan or this is my last slot.
I think it's your last slot.
Okay,
right. Yeah, I think it is. Right, okay, so let's talk about some other stuff.
So we were talking about the Avatar.
Yes.
Should we get into this? So this is really interesting. So off the back
Do you want another one, by the way?
Yeah, go on.
Julie in Notts says, hi both.
Hello, Julie. How are you?
She's very well.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Hi, both. Freddie Mercury with Queen. I'd love to see him as an avatar.
Yes.
I wish I'd seen him live.
Yeah.
This also, Sandra. Good morning to Sandra in sunny Essex. I would love to see Queen, as I never went to any of their concerts when Freddie was alive. I would also love that.
Yeah, so the closest we've got with Queen, it's really interesting, the Adam Lambert shows with Queen.
Yes.
He pops up as like, this is like a hologram in the middle of Bohemian Rhapsody, and there's huge applause. Freddie Mercury just suddenly appears, and you go, oh my God, there he is. So you're right, there's enough footage. It's interesting with these holograms, because, you know, the ABBA show, they actually they did that.
Yes.
They did that. So you're using bespoke footage because they're still around, so they got them together and they did the show.
Did they put little blobs on them and they were in green, you know?
Exactly.
So yeah.
You know, what they can do is amazing.
It's amazing, yeah.
So with Queen, what you would have to do, and you've got so many hours of footage, you know, there's so many hours of like Freddie Mercury on stage and what have you. So you'd have to very
But it's not 3D. So how do they do that?
Exactly. So that takes us on nicely to this story because Simon Fuller, the manager of the Spice Girls, who put together the ABBA show, has said there have been loads of rumours about Spice Girls coming back and doing like a 30th anniversary show. However, if they did it, Victoria doesn't want to be a part of it. You know, she's got her own thing going on. So he's saying, well, maybe we could do it as an Avatar show. And apparently Victoria Beckham said, well, actually, if it's that, I would be more inclined to come over
and do it as a one-off.
Do it as a one-off.
But isn't that like Agnetha? Because she doesn't want to do an ABBA tour.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly like that.
Yeah.
So could you do it? Would they rely on? I mean, I suppose if you did the Spice Girls, you would get loads of kind of vintage '90s footage, Jerry and the Union Jack, you know, dress, and the Spice Girls, Victoria not being able to sing, and all that kind of stuff. But that would be such a great show. So it's all like, you know, Oasis was always going to be the big gig this year, Spice Girls next year, because it's 30 years next year. So
I mean, how is that? Do you know that video? Was it Wannabe? Was filmed in St Pancras Station in the hotel, but it was derelict at the time.
What was it?
Yes, before they, you know,
because you got the big staircase.
Exactly, the staircase.
Yeah.
So in St Pancras Station.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, because I filmed Most Haunted live many years ago. That was one of our big shows.
Yeah.
And we went in, and it was just this derelict building, and that's where the staircase is on one of them.
Yeah. That's such a famous video, isn't it? Everyone remembers the band. That song, Wannabe, was their first song, wasn't it? I think I'd go and see an Avatar of the Spice Girls. I mentioned this on Virgin Radio yesterday. Loads of people were saying George Michael. They were saying Bowie.
Yes.
They were saying Queen.
I've got another
Whitney
one.
Houston.
My one would be Michael Jackson.
Michael Jackson's, that's interesting. So,
although the stage show is meant to be brilliant, you told me that.
MJ the musical, the Michael Jackson musical. It's on at the moment.
I want to see it.
In London's West End. Is incredible. Like, I've never seen staging like that. You blink and there's a whole new... I mean, the remake of Thriller in that show is utterly incredible. And Smooth Criminal, things come down from the stage, you're like, I can't believe I'm seeing this.
I need to go and see it.
It really is, and you can get a ticket for about £60 now for MJ the musical.
I need to go and see it immediately.
Do go and see it. Can I take you to the theatre?
Yes, well, I thought we just were in the theatre.
Well, I've just been to see the most incredible play.
I want your life.
This is the hottest ticket in London's West End. This is John Lithgow as Roald Dahl in a play. It's called Giants. Can I show you a little bit? You've got a little bit of a trailer of what to expect, but this is brilliant.
Well, it didn't say much.
There we go. So all you need to know is, so you were just watching, we were watching John Lithgow, who is 79 years old.
Yes.
And he is a very tall man. He's about kind of 6'7", I think he is. And he comes out on stage and he totally owns this play. I don't want to give away, because it's a very important subject, serious subject matter, but in the light of October the 7th and the subsequent war in Gaza, this is such an important play. It's set in the 80s and something very controversial that Roald Dahl said in a magazine. So his agent came over from America to try and sort the situation out, and that is the play. It's set in Kent, and it's Roald Dahl being, I mean, he's quite a difficult character, but he believed in what he believed in. And people are saying, you know, well, so you can get a ticket for this play for about £400. It really is the hottest kind of ticket in London to go and see. May I offer up a recommendation?
Yes.
I bought a £20 ticket.
Oh, wow.
So if you turn up, they say to you, would you like to sit or would you like to stand? You get a standing ticket for £20.
Wow.
However,
seems a long time to stand.
If there's a seat available, they'll put you in a seat. So you buy the £20 ticket. So one of the stewards came up to me and said, actually, there's a seat available down there.
Oh, that's good.
So I managed to get to see this great play for just £20. But John Lithgow's a brilliant actor. You've probably seen him on TV, in movies. It's really rare to see. I mean, just the moment he steps out on stage, he owns it. He's got it.
Right.
It's only 2 hours long. It's at a tiny little theatre right by the Harold Pinter Theatre, right by Leicester Square, but everybody is raving about it. Literally, it's getting 5 out of 5, 10 out of 10, so I recommend it.
OK, perfect. Netflix?
Netflix, I want to talk about this. They do this so well. This is a brand new documentary. I was utterly glued when I had no voice last week. It's American Manhunt, the hunt for Osama bin Laden, OK? It's 3 parts. Do you want to have a look at this?
Yes.
This has got words in.
You had branches of Al-Qaeda everywhere. Bin Laden basically franchised himself.
American Manhunt.
They had a stronghold in Tora Bora. That's where the intelligence said that they had retreated to.
This is the time to come in with massive force and end this thing. Bin Laden got away.
Wow.
Oh, it's amazing. It's gripping. It's well produced. You see, it starts off with 9/11, which is still obviously
horrific.
So horrific and so shocking to see. You know, I hadn't seen it for a while, and you just see it, and it's just heartbreaking, just awful. But then you've got the intelligence work, all the close calls, the interagency kind of dramas, the 10-year build-up to them getting bin Laden and how they did it and the twists and turns in the way. And actually interviews from some of George W. Bush's closest people, you know, in how they nearly got him but then didn't get him, and there were some really kind of heartbreaking moments over the years where they got somebody in who they thought might give them insider information, but that guy was a terrorist and blew up loads of the CIA people.
Oh, my goodness.
Just incredible. Honestly, I couldn't leave it until I saw it. And then of course it ends with you know, the amazing Obama speech saying, we got him, and even down to that last moment where they found Osama bin Laden in the compound. Do you remember the helicopter crash? It clipped a wall, and you've got Hillary Clinton in the, you know, in the Oval Office going, oh my gosh, I think this is going to be like the worst thing ever. We're going to lose all of our SEALs. They actually have an interview with a SEAL who was involved in this mission and what happened. They built bin Laden's compound, actually built it so they could rehearse every single eventuality, you know, what might happen. So they knew it back to front. So when they actually got in there, they knew what they were doing. They took him out, and it's an incredible story. But it's a 10-year story, and it's told brilliantly. Yeah.
Brilliant. Steve, thank you. Time has been
lovely to see you.
Thank you. Always good to see you there. Steve Denyer there from Virgin Radio joining us in the studio. We'll take a break. After the break, your calls, thoughts and messages. This is Weekend Breakfast. Good morning.
part of the HR network. They are specialists who deal with equality. They will advise on policy. They will help support HR when it comes to complex and difficult cases. That's the sort of work that they're doing. You're talking about 500 people out of an organisation of more than 500,000 that are working on this particular area. It's not extraordinary. All big organisations, private sector and public sector, will have HR experts and equality experts to help ensure that the best people get on in an organisation and an organisation treats its staff fairly.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Final part. This is Talk 9:54. Many messages coming in about avatars. Who would you like to see as an avatar? Steve was saying this earlier on. I said Michael Jackson. Hi, David and Steve. This is Joanna in Salisbury, an avatar of Dave Allen. My goodness, I grew up watching Dave Allen. He would have so much more material now and give this country a bit of a shake-up. I saw him, some of the replays of this recently, and he was so funny, so witty, so pithy. Good morning, David. I'd love to see Keir Starmer as an avatar. You could then turn him off. Great show, great guest, and of course a great shirt. Thank you, Ian, in Hemel Hempstead. Hi, David. It would be amazing to have George Michael as an avatar, one of the greatest songwriters and performers. Great show. That's Mark in London. Thank you. David, the avatar has to be Elvis. That's Penny in Essex. David, as an avatar performance, it must be the Bee Gees. That's Barry. Then, hi, David. As an avatar, I would like to see Batman and Robin. Regards, Phil from Hertfordshire. We've been talking about Carry On films as well. This is Claire in Scarborough. Good morning to you, Claire. I love Carry On films as well, David. I now have the urge to go and watch one, actually. My 7-year-old daughter, Connie, her name came from Joan Sims's character name in Carry On Girls. Wow. My 4-year-old son is Sydney. He's named after the great Sid James. I watch the Carry On films with my kids and they get excited pointing out who they're named after. That's great. I love... Okay. I love the traditional British slapstick humour. I would agree completely. Who needs the Carry On films when we have Carry On Labour? That's Graham in Bushy. Then, on a more serious note, hi, David. Excellent guest and show as always. Thank you very much. When are we going to wake up and realise that Starmer and his cronies are globalist? It's all an agenda. It's all on purpose. We're being herded like cattle. Tony in Manchester says, David, the best Carry On film is by far Carry On Screaming. Ooh, I'd forgotten that one as well. Carl in Knutsford. Great show, David. Thank you. And great shout, re the Carry On films. I love Spitting Image too. It was always a must-watch in our house. That's the point. And I made that thing about the Thatcher, about the cabinet and the vegetables. Well, remember the Thatcher cabinet vegetables reference, but goodness me, what gravitas, intellect and credibility those politicians had when you look at the current government. I just can't forget seeing Norman Tebbit dressed in, I don't even know if I can say what he was dressed as. But anyway, have a look at the Carry On, at Spitting Image. This is Sue in Essex. Hi, David. Great show. One of the best things about this country is our sense of humour. All the stuff that we found funny, like Carry On films, Benny Hill, etc., now need trigger warnings or are being banned. That's Sue in Essex. Thank you very much for that. Thomas is on the line from the West Midlands. Good morning.
Morning.
What's on your mind this morning?
Well, I was listening to your conversation earlier about how much money it's costing.
Yes.
For asylum seekers, etc.
Well, yeah, well, it's actually foreign nationals coming into this country. £1 billion a month are paid to those families.
Yeah, I appreciate that, yes. Well, as soon as it goes, I'm married to a foreign national.
Yes.
And came in on a marriage visa. Now, on the visa, it states she's not entitled to any public funds. which I haven't got a problem with. I paid for the National Health Service up front, cost me £2,000. Everything else that she needs, we paid for. So, you know, everybody's getting tired of the same brush.
Yeah. It just seems deeply unfair, doesn't it?
It is very unfair. You know, I had to have a lot of money in the bank. It probably cost me over £5,000. I had to take English tests, medicals, jump through loads of hoops. And yeah, no benefits. Not that I want any benefits.
No.
But I would like to point out as well, trying to get a job in this country, even legally, it's nigh on impossible. I've enrolled in numerous agencies. I've printed out CVs, taken them round nursing homes in the immediate vicinity. And no one wants to employ them without any experience. So how do we need this 250,000 carers?
Well, it's a very good point, Tom.
I do.
Well, Thomas, it's a great point. Sorry, time has run away with us. Thomas in the West Midlands there. Peter Caldwell, I'm sorry, time is very tight. Hello, good morning.
We'll talk more about that story in a minute or two. We'll also be